starts to feel like a warning. But that night, the one I'm talking about now, it was different. It was just after 2:30 a.m. I remember because the coffee on my desk had gone cold, and my neck was starting to ache from staring at the monitors. The night was unusually quiet. No domestic disputes, no highway accidents, not even a drunk and disorderly. Just the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the soft chatter from the other dispatchers down the row. Then my line lit up. I put the headset back on and gave the standard greeting, voice steady, words drilled into muscle memory. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing, just silence. I asked again, leaning forward slightly, like getting closer to the mic might make a difference. 911, can you hear me? Still nothing, and then, right before I was about to mark it as a hang-up, I heard it. Breathing. Not the shallow kind you hear when someone's scared. This was deep, slow, measured, like the person on the other end had all the time in the world. I could hear the air pulling in, then pushing out, steady as a metronome. Sir? Ma'am? If you can hear me, say something. I need to know you're okay. The breathing didn't change. It was strange. Most silent callers fidget. You hear movement, muffled voices, maybe background noise. But this was nothing but the breathing, close to the receiver, like they were just listening. I felt myself match it without realizing. Inhale, exhale, slow, deep. Somewhere in my head, I thought, cut it out. You're not here to play along. Listen, I said, if you're hurt, tap the phone twice. We'll send someone to you. Nothing. I muted my mic for a second and flagged my supervisor. Told her I had a live line with no response, just breathing. She gave me the trace it gesture. I ran the ping on the number. The system spit out coordinates, but they didn't lock right. The signal bounced. 1 second, it was showing a point downtown. The next, it was half a mile away. Every time I refreshed, the pin shifted like the caller was moving or like the location itself couldn't decide where it was. I unmuted my mic. Caller, I can hear you breathing. I know you can hear me. I'm here to help you, but I need you to say something. Nothing. That's when the rhythm changed. Slightly. Just a fraction. And I realized it was because they were matching me now. I froze. My breathing had been steady. In for 4, out for 4, and theirs had shifted to match perfectly. I tested it. Took a short, sharp inhale. On the line, they did the same. My throat went dry. All right, I said quietly, you think this is funny? There was no response. Just the breathing, my breathing echoing back. It wasn't possible. There's always a delay, even a small one, when a sound carries over a phone line. But this was instant. Like they were breathing inside my head. I hit the mute again and told my supervisor, they're copying me. She looked confused. I don't blame her. I sounded crazy. I unmuted and tried again. Where are you? No answer. Just that same inhale-exhale, perfectly in sync with mine. I pulled up the numbers record. It wasn't in the system. No name, no address, just a 10-digit string with no carrier ID. That shouldn't happen. Even block numbers leave a trace on our end. The breathing grew louder. Not faster, just closer. Like whoever it was had leaned in until their lips were right next to the receiver. For a moment, I had the strangest feeling that if I spoke any softer, they'd be able to hear my thoughts. I leaned back in my chair, slowed my breathing intentionally, keeping it calm. They're slowed too. And then they stopped. No breathing. No sound at all. The silence was worse. It was like someone had turned off the world. No hum from the monitors, no chatter from the other dispatchers, just a hollow emptiness in my ears. I thought maybe the call had dropped. I checked the screen. No. Still connected. Timer still running. Then, in that silence, I heard it. A whisper. So faint I almost missed it. Just one word. Closer. It was enough to jolt me forward, my chair wheels squealing against the floor. I unmuted and barked into the mic. Identify yourself right now, or this call is ending. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't hang up. I couldn't. The breathing started again, but now it was faster. Harsher, like they were excited. And it wasn't matching mine anymore. It was leading it, pulling me along. I don't know how long I sat there, listening. My hand hovered over the disconnect key, but my fingers wouldn't press it. The last thing I remember from that call was realizing I'd been leaning forward so far. My forehead was almost touching the desk. And somewhere in that steady breathing, I could hear the faintest sound beneath it, a creak. Wood, maybe. Floorboards shifting under weight. Right before the line went dead, I heard one final inhale. And it didn't sound like it came from the phone anymore. It sounded like it came from right behind me, that I didn't sleep well after that call. I told myself I'd shake it off, that it was just some bored kid with a voice changer, or maybe a drunk with nothing better to do at 2:30 in the morning. But the truth was, I couldn't stop hearing it. That breathing, that single word, closer, coiled inside my head like a splinter I couldn't pull out. 2 nights later, I was back at my desk. Same hum of the lights. Same glowing monitors. Same coffee going cold before I'd even taken a sip. It was around 1:50 a.m. when my line lit up again. 911, what's your emergency? At first, nothing. That dead air that's not quite silence. Just enough static to let you know someone's there. Then the breathing started. Slow. Deep. Exactly like before. My chest tightened. I tried to sound firm, maybe even bored like I'd dealt with this 1,000 times. All right, if you're the same person from the other night, you're wasting my time. Either tell me what you need, or I'm ending this call. There was a pause, and then, for the first time, they spoke. A man's voice, low, rough, like he'd been breathing cold air for hours. He said an address. Just the address. It was maybe half a mile from the station. My fingers moved automatically, logging it into the system. The map popped up on my screen, but instead of showing a building, the pin landed in the middle of an empty block. No house, no storefront, just gray space. I thought maybe it was a data glitch, so I cross-checked the county records. The address didn't exist. Not now, not ever. I swallowed, kept my tone even. Can you confirm the city for me? The voice repeated the address exactly. Same tone, same pauses, like it wasn't a conversation, just a script he was reading from. I asked again a little louder. This time, there was no answer, just the breathing. I muted my mic, waved over to Kara, the dispatcher in the next seat. She leaned in, eyebrows raised. Got a bad line? She whispered. Sort of, I said, and typed the address on a scrap of paper for her. She frowned, pulled it up on her own screen. That's not real, she mouthed. On my monitor, the GPS ping for the call flickered. The little red that marked the caller's location jumped, just a few blocks over, and landed in a vacant lot. I refreshed the feed. It jumped again, this time to the other side of town. Is this a cell? Kara asked. I nodded, checked the signal strength. It was strong, too strong to be bouncing like that. I unmuted the line. Sir, are you moving right now? The breathing quickened slightly, but he didn't answer. The dot on the map blinked and jumped again. This time, it landed in the middle of a bridge, one that had been demolished over 10 years ago. I felt a slow, crawling heat in my chest. Listen, I need you to tell me if you're in danger. Are you hurt? There was the faintest sound on the line, like something brushing against the receiver. Then the voice came again. Same address, same rhythm. But this time, he said my name after it. I didn't remember giving it to him. I muted the mic again, turned to Kara. Did I say my name earlier? She shook her head. You didn't even give the station ID. I was listening. When I looked back at the map, the dot was gone. The system still showed the call as active, but the GPS data had wiped itself. No history, no record of the jumps. I forced my voice to stay steady as I unmuted. Sir, I'm going to need you to... He cut me off. This time, his words were different. Come find me. I felt my grip tighten on the mic. We can't help you if you don't. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the blank spot on the map for a long time after that. I tried redialing, but the number didn't exist. Not out of service. Not disconnected. Just not there. Like it had never been assigned to anyone. Kara suggested I file it as a bad call and move on. So I did. Or at least I tried to. But when my shift ended and I stepped outside, I noticed something. Across the street, under the orange glow of the streetlight, was a man. Too far away to see his face clearly, but close enough to see the way his chest rose and fell. Slow, deep, exactly in time with mine. The address stuck in my head for the rest of that shift. It was like a song I didn't want to hum, but kept catching myself repeating under my breath. I tell myself to focus on the new calls. A drunk driver here, a noise complaint there. But every time I glanced at my notes, I'd see it scribbled in my handwriting. a place that doesn't exist. By the next night, I convinced myself I needed closure. Not curiosity, not boredom, just closure. That's what I told myself. So when I clocked in, I pulled my supervisor aside. I didn't tell her about the breathing or my name, just that I'd had a possible bad address and thought maybe we should send someone to check it out. She agreed. Probably figured it was a waste of resources, but the night was quiet. 2 officers, Myers and Darnell, got the dispatch. I kept my headset on and followed their progress over the radio. They were about 3 minutes out when I finally pulled up the satellite view of the block. And I realized something. There was a building there, one I'd somehow missed before. It was long and narrow, wedged between 2 newer apartment complexes like it had been forgotten. The image looked old, the colors washed out, the shadows sharp. Most of the windows were boarded up. The front door was sealed with a sheet of plywood. When Myers keyed in over the radio, his voice had that flat tone cops use when they're unimpressed. "Dispatch, we're at your location. Looks abandoned." "Copy," I said, keeping it professional. "Any sign of forced entry?" "Not unless you count 30 years of weather damage," Darnell muttered. They walked the perimeter, checking each entrance. "All doors are sealed," Myers reported. "Windows, too. Whole place is condemned. No way someone's living here." I wrote it down, tried to ignore the strange weight in my chest. But then Darnell spoke up again. "Hold up. I thought I saw movement in there." I sat up straighter. "Inside. Yeah. Top floor. Back window. Could have been a shadow." Myers told him it was probably a raccoon, but I heard the quick shuffle of their boots as they circled to the rear. A minute passed. Then 2. "Dispatch," Myers said finally. "We're not seeing anything now. You sure about this call?" I started to answer, but my monitor lit up. An incoming call, and the number was blank. No digits, no origin, just a solid white space where the ID should be. My stomach dropped. I clicked in anyway. 911, what's your emergency? The breathing hit me immediately. Deep, steady, like the first call, like the second. I swallowed, my voice quieter now. "What do you want?" This time, the voice came almost right away. It said my name, not just my first name, my full name. And it didn't sound like the man's voice from before. It sounded closer, familiar. The line in my headset hissed softly between breaths. "Where are you?" I asked. The voice ignored me. It said the address again, the same fake address. Then, "I'm here." I froze. "Here where?" Silence. Then a click. But my console still showed the call as active. The timer kept running, even though I couldn't hear anything. "Myers," I said into the radio, my throat tight. "Caller claims to be at that location right now." "Dispatch, I'm telling you," Myers replied. "This place is sealed. Nobody's inside." I didn't answer right away, because in my headset, the breathing had started again. Not in the background, not faint, but so close it was like someone had their mouth right against my ear. And then it changed. It started matching me again. I pushed back from the desk, trying to throw off the rhythm. My chair wheels squeaked loud enough for Kara to glance over at me. In the radio channel, Myers was saying something about heading back. But I could barely hear him, because the breathing wasn't just matching me. It was anticipating me, drawing a fraction of a second before I did, releasing just before I let go of my own breath. Like it knew what I was about to do. I yanked the headset off, and in the second it left my ear, I swear, I heard the faintest creak of wood, not through the speakers, but somewhere behind me. I told myself it was just the chair, just the building settling. But I didn't put the headset back on until Myers and Darnell were safely in their cruiser, heading away from that boarded-up shell. The rest of the shift was uneventful, at least on paper. In reality, I kept catching my own reflection in the darkened glass of the monitors. And every so often, I could have sworn I saw my lips moving, just slightly, even when I wasn't speaking. I thought the call had ended. It should have ended. The voice went quiet, no more breathing, no words. Just the faint hiss of the line, and then nothing. But when I glanced at my console, the timer was still counting. 02:17:08. 02:17:09. 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 10 seconds. I tapped the disconnect key. Nothing happened. Tried again. Still nothing. I muted the headset and flagged my supervisor over. She leaned down, squinting at the screen. "Just reboot the station," she said. "It's probably frozen." So I did. But when the system came back online, the call was still there. Timer unbroken. It was a quiet night, so she told me to just leave it and focus on new calls. But that's easier said than done when you've got a live line sitting open, hanging in the corner of your vision like a shadow you can't ignore. Every so often, I'd check it. Still connected. No sound. It wasn't until an hour later that something changed. I was mid-sentence on another call, a fender bender, when I heard it. Not through the speakers, not through the headset, but behind me. That breathing. Slow, deliberate. Like the caller was standing just over my shoulder, waiting for me to turn around. I froze in the middle of my sentence. The guy on the accident call kept talking, oblivious. I forced myself to finish helping him, hung up, and pulled off my headset. The room looked normal. Kara was still at her station. 2 other dispatchers sat down the row. No one behind me. Still, the feeling stayed. That strange pull between my shoulder blades, like a weight was pressing there. I told myself I was imagining it. I went back to work, but a few minutes later, I heard something else. A soft, almost imperceptible sound beneath the hum of the room. Click, click, click. It took me a second to place it, the sound of a headset mic being gently tapped. I checked mine. My hands weren't anywhere near it. Then, through the dead line, a whisper. Closer. I pushed my chair back, so fast it nearly tipped. Kara shot me a look. What? Nothing. I muttered, shoving the headset onto the desk. But I couldn't shake it. The word seemed to hang in the air long after it was spoken. Closer. I kept glancing at the dark window by the far wall. Dispatch is on the 2nd floor, so usually all you see is the reflection of the room. But now, I had this terrible thought. What if there was something on the other side? Something pressed right up against the glass, breathing in sync with me. By 5 a.m., the call had been running for over 4 hours. I tried again to disconnect it. No response. The system didn't even acknowledge my input. When the end of shift relief came in, I logged off as fast as I could. Told myself I'd let the tech team deal with it. Outside, the air was cold and damp. Dawn was still a ways off. I walked to my car in the half-light, trying to feel normal again. But halfway across the lot, I stopped. Because somewhere behind me, faint but clear, I heard it. Breathing. I turned so fast my vision blurred. The lot was empty. No footsteps, no voices. Just the soft hum of the streetlights. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the station windows. And that's when I saw it, a shadow inside, passing between 2 desks. It moved like someone walking, except it didn't have a right shape. The shoulders were too narrow. The head was tilted just slightly like it was listening. I got in my car and drove home. But that night, and the next, and the one after, I couldn't bring myself to sleep without the TV on. Because when the room went quiet, I could hear it again. Not through a phone, not from outside, from the dark corner of my bedroom. Still on the line, that IT started just afternoon. The weather outside was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything look colder than it really is. The radio chatter was quiet, just a few noise complaints and a false alarm from a security system that went off when some guy burnt toast. I was halfway through a stale cup of coffee when the phone rang. It wasn't the usual kind of call. The voice on the other end wasn't yelling or gasping. It was tight, strained, like every word was being squeezed out between clenched teeth. "Something's in the ceiling," he said. I asked for his name. He told me it was Thomas. His breathing was shallow, fast, like he'd been running, but I couldn't hear the sound of movement, just this faint echo, like he was in a big, empty room. "Where are you?" I asked. "Public library," he said, barely above a whisper. "Downtown, 2nd floor." In the history section, I started typing it in. Standard procedure. Address, cross street, any immediate danger. But then he said something that made me freeze. "It's in the crawl space," he whispered. "Right above me. I can hear it move. I know the downtown library. I've been there since I was a kid. The 2nd floor doesn't have a crawl space. The ceiling is high, 15 feet, maybe more, and all open beams and lighting fixtures. There's no attic, no access panels. Nothing. Still, I kept my voice steady. "What's it doing, Thomas?" The line went quiet for a moment, except for his breathing. Then, very faint, I heard something else. A sound like soft scratching, nails on wood. But it didn't sound like it was coming from the phone. It sounded wrong, like the mic was picking it up from farther away. "It's crawling," he said finally. "Slow." I can feel the dust falling on my face. I wrote that down. My hands felt cold. I told him to stay where he was, that officers were on the way. I pinged the call location to dispatch units. It came back clean, libraries open, normal operations. The front desk clerk didn't report anything strange. Except Thomas wasn't at the front desk. He said he was between the shelves, sitting on the floor, knees pulled to his chest. I told him to keep talking to me. "I saw when I came in," he said. "Not all of it, just a shadow, moving along the wall. I thought it was a trick of the light. Then I heard the wood above me creak." He paused, his breathing quickening. "It's circling now." The scratching was louder, almost rhythmic. I tried to focus, to figure out if it could be something explainable, a raccoon, maybe, or a bird trapped in the rafters. But the sound didn't match. It wasn't the skitter of an animal. It was slower, more deliberate. "How close is it?" I asked. Thomas's voice shook. "If I stand up, I think I could touch it through the ceiling." That made no sense. I could picture the history section clearly. Tall shelves, high lights, ceiling 20 feet up. But he said it like it was just inches above him. I told him to move toward the front desk, but he refused. "It's following me," he said. He was whispering now, and I realized I was leaning closer to the headset, like that would make me hear better. Then the scratching stopped. We both went silent. A low sound came through the line. Not a growl, not exactly a voice, but something. It was like air being drawn in through a narrow throat. A slow, deliberate inhale. Thomas's breath hitched. "It's leaning down," he whispered. "It's looking at me." I wanted to ask what was looking at him, but I couldn't get the words out before he said something that made my stomach drop. "It's smiling." Every hair on my arms stood up. I told him the officers were close, that he just needed to keep talking. But he didn't answer. The line stayed open, but it was just breathing, his quick and panicked, and the other one, slower, heavier. I heard a faint tap, like something touching the phone, and Thomas whispered, "It knows your voice." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" No answer, just a sound. A deep, dry scrape, like nails dragging over wood. Then, silence. "Thomas," I asked. "Nothing." "Thomas, can you hear me?" Still nothing. The officers arrived within minutes. They swept the history section. No one was there. Not Thomas. Not anyone. The librarian said no one had been in that section for over an hour. The air was still quiet. No footprints in the dust on the floor. They checked the ceiling. Solid beams. No panels. No crawl space. When they told me that, I realized my hand was still gripping the pen, so hard my knuckles were white. I filed the report as caller unfound. That's what we put when someone disappears between the call and the arrival. I thought that would be the end of it. But when I clocked out that night and walked to my car, I could have sworn I heard faint scratching above me. I thought the call would have dropped by now. It kept crackling, fading in and out like it was breathing through a lungful of static. I had both hands pressed over my headset, leaning forward in my chair, trying to block out the low hum of the dispatch room behind me. "Sir, can you still hear me?" I asked. There was nothing for a long moment. Just the hiss of the line, like someone was rubbing sandpaper over the mic. Then, "She's right above me." It was barely a whisper. A breath, not a voice. But I knew it was him. The same man from earlier. The one in the library. I straightened in my seat, my heart thudding harder now. "Sir, officers are already inside the building. You need to stay calm. They're going to find you, okay?" The sound faded again. I thought the call had gone dead, but then, muffled under that hiss. Closer. That word didn't come out like normal speech. It slid out of him, like it was painful to say. I muted my mic and waved at Jenna, who was working 2 stations down. "Hey, did they find him yet?" She looked up from her screen, shaking her head. "Officers say there's no crawl space. They're checking every floor." I didn't like that. Not one bit. This guy sounded trapped, and trapped people didn't have time for a building-wide search. I unmuted. "Sir, I need you to tell me exactly where you are. Are you in a room? Near a window? Give me something so I can tell the officers." Silence. Then the sound of something dragging. It wasn't loud, more like a fabric sleeve brushing wood. My brain filled in the picture before I wanted it to. I imagined him lying on his stomach, hands over his head, watching something move above the thin ceiling. I could almost hear nails or fingertips pressing down through plaster. The dragging sound stopped. His voice cracked, static breaking it into pieces. Right above me, the way he said it made my skin crawl. Not because of the words, but because of the conviction. Like he wasn't just warning me, he was warning himself. I typed into the system log. Caller says female subject is above him, possibly inside building structure. I knew it was vague, but it was better than phantom in non-existent crawl space. Jenna leaned toward me, covering her mic. Unit 23 says they're on the second floor. No sign of movement. No noises. I swallowed hard. Tell them to keep looking. I went back to him. Sir, you're going to hear voices. It's just the officers. Stay where you are. No. The way he said that, just one sharp syllable, made me stop. No, if I move, she'll hear me. I didn't know what to say to that. My training told me to keep him talking, but his breathing was all over the place, fast, shallow, almost like a rabbit's before it bolts. Okay, I said slowly. Then, tell me about her. What does she look like? Nothing. Just the faint, rhythmic sound of air passing in and out. Then, almost like he was right in my ear, you don't look at her. You don't. It didn't sound like he was describing her. It sounded like a rule. Something someone had told him a long time ago. My arm hair stood on end. Sir, I began, but he cut me off. She's closer now. That was the third time he'd said it, but this time I thought I heard another sound under his voice. Like a second breath. Wet and low. I checked the signal meter on the call. It was steady. No reason for the extra noise. My eyes flicked to the clock on my console. He'd been on the line with me for 16 minutes. The officers had been inside for 9. Why hadn't they found him yet? I typed into the notes again. Possible hallucination or mental breakdown. Advise caution. Almost immediately, the radio chatter kicked up. Unit 23 saying they'd cleared the West Wing. No sign of anyone matching the description we'd given. I muted my mic again. Are they sure? I asked Jenna. She shrugged, but her eyes said she didn't like it either. I unmuted. Sir, are you sure you're in the library? Static surged, making me wince. Then, as it faded, you don't know where I am. It wasn't an accusation. It was just flat. A statement of fact. I didn't like how certain he sounded. Yes, I said quickly. You told me the library. That's where we sent help. There was a pause. Then, it's not a library anymore. That sent a cold ripple through me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice quieter now. But all I got back was his breathing. And that dragging noise again, slower this time, like whatever was above him was taking its time. His voice trembled now. Almost here. I was just about to tell him to hang on when the radio clicked again. Officers saying they'd swept the entire second floor. No one there. I stared at my screen. The address was correct. The call's GPS ping was correct. But if he wasn't in the library, then where the hell was he? I didn't get the chance to ask, because the next sound wasn't him at all. It was a whisper, high and thin, bleeding through the line. He's mine. I ripped my headset halfway off before I could stop myself, my pulse pounding in my ears. When I put it back, the line was nothing but static. Sir, can you hear me? A long, heavy pause. Then, she's right above me. But it didn't sound like him anymore. That I thought cutting into the ceiling would settle it. I thought once we saw the empty space, or lack of it, he'd stop calling. But that night proved I didn't understand what was happening at all. It started just after 9. The library was closed to the public, but the crime scene tape was still up from the earlier investigation. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting that pale, sickly glow that makes every shadow look deeper than it should. The man, his name was Aaron, though I only learned that later, had stopped calling for a few hours after the officers left. I'd hoped maybe he went home, got some rest, or realized he was mistaken about whatever he'd heard. But the thing about hope is that it doesn't last long in this job. At 9:12 p.m., the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the second I answered, I knew. It was his breathing. That shaky, uneven rhythm, like someone tried to hold it together while every nerve in their body told them to run. She's still here, he whispered. I didn't say anything at first. It felt like my throat closed up for a second, like my own body didn't want me to acknowledge him. "She's still here," he repeated. "You didn't find her." I told him we'd searched, that the library's roof had no crawl space, that the officers had checked every inch of the building. He didn't argue. He just sighed, not out of relief, but like he was disappointed I hadn't figured it out. "You think I'm talking about your roof," he said quietly. "But she's not in your roof. She's in mine." I remember gripping the desk tighter. "Where exactly are you now?" There was a pause. His voice came back lower, almost embarrassed. "I don't know anymore." I thought maybe he meant he didn't know the address. But the way he said it, it didn't sound like he was lost in a city. It sounded like he was lost in something else. Still, I tried to keep him grounded. "You called earlier from the public library. Are you still there?" He inhaled sharply, and for a second I thought I heard a faint, slow scrape above him. But the library was empty. I knew it was empty. "She moves when I talk," he whispered. "That's why I stop sometimes. But when I'm quiet, she gets bolder." I turned to the officer still stationed in the lobby. He shook his head. No one had entered or left. The building was locked down. But Aaron kept talking, like he didn't hear me moving, like my voice was already fading for him. "I can see the boards shaking now," he murmured. "Just little tremors, like when you put your hand on a sleeping cat and feel its breathing." I told him to get out, just to move away from whatever he thought was above him. But his voice didn't rise. It didn't panic. It just got thinner. "She's lying on her stomach," he said. "Her chin's hanging through the crack between the beams. I can't see her eyes, but she's smiling." I bit down hard on my lip to stop myself from answering right away. I knew that even if he was imagining it, the image he'd put in my head was now stuck there. The officers decided to check the area again. We split up, one of them walking the main hall, the other the side rooms, while I stayed on the line with him. He started humming under his breath. It wasn't a song I recognized. Just 3 notes, up and down, over and over. When I asked him why, he said, "If she hears my voice, she stops moving. If she hears yours, she pretends she's not there." That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Because if something stops moving when it hears you, it means it's listening. By 9:35 p.m., one of the officers came back and told me they'd found something strange. Not the woman, not a crawl space, but in one corner of the ceiling, one panel had a faint outline of dust disturbed. Like something had shifted from above, even though there was supposed to be no space above it. They decided to cut it open. I kept Aaron on the line, telling him what they were doing. He didn't respond for a while, and I thought maybe he'd hung up. But then his voice returned, sharp and close, like he'd moved the phone right against his mouth. "She's moving fast now," he said. "She knows you're trying to find her." The sound of the saw starting up filled the room, the blade chewing through the thin ceiling panel. Dust rained down in a slow, choking drizzle. The air smelled like old wood and mold. The officer pulled the cut section free, and we all craned our necks to look. Nothing, just the thin metal under the roof. No hollow space, no boards, no one lying on their stomach smiling through the cracks. I told Aaron. I said there was nothing there. And for the first time, he laughed. It wasn't loud. It was almost tender, like he felt sorry for me. "I know," he said. "You're in the wrong ceiling." The call dropped. We tried calling him back, but the number went to a dead tone. The officers eventually left, muttering that he was either messing with us or losing his mind. I want to believe that too. I needed to believe that. But at 11:47 p.m., my phone rang again. Same number. He didn't say hello. He didn't breathe heavy. He just whispered, "She's closer now." I asked where he was. His voice kept flickering in and out, like the signal was bad, but each time it returned, it was softer, more strained. "She's right above my face now," he murmured. "Her teeth are." Static swallowed him. I thought we'd lost the call again, but then I realized the static wasn't from the line. It was in the room with him, like the sound of fabric being dragged over a microphone. Then nothing. That was the last time I heard from him that night. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined looking up at my own ceiling and seeing the faint dip of someone's weight pressing down, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. And the worst part? It didn't feel like his calls were coming from far away anymore. It felt like he was getting closer to, I thought it was over. After the last time we cut into that ceiling, After the officers came back shaking their heads, covered in plaster dust, saying there was nothing up there but air and insulation. I thought that was the end of it. No more calls from him. No more faint, desperate breathing in my ear. No more voice whispering about her crawling above him. But if I'm being honest, part of me didn't believe it was over. Not really. The thing about working here, in dispatch, is you learn how to tell when someone's not just afraid but certain. You can hear it in the voice. It's not the kind of fear that comes from being startled or surprised. It's the kind that comes from knowing. That man, he knew something was up there. Whether or not we found it didn't change that. It was quiet for 3 days. That's nothing, really. I've gone weeks without hearing from the same number before. But it was the kind of quiet that didn't feel like rest. It felt like the silence you get right before a storm, the way the air feels heavier, like it's holding its breath with you. The third night, I was on the late shift again. Just me, the empty room, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and the faint buzz from the equipment. It's funny, when you work in a job like this long enough, you start hearing phantom ringing. Sometimes I swear I hear voices even when the lines are dead. It was 2:13 a.m. when the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It wasn't his number. That's the first thing that stuck out. It was a number I didn't recognize out of county. And when I picked up, I didn't even get a second to speak before the sound came through. Not a voice. Not breathing. Just knocking. Slow. Measured. Wood on wood. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. I froze with the headset pressed to my ear, my mouth hanging open. I knew, immediately, that it wasn't coming from the other side of some phone line. It was coming from here. From above me. I tilted my head back, my neck stiff, and stared at the yellowed ceiling tiles above the dispatch desk. The sound was faint, but real, not a trick of the earpiece. It was coming from directly overhead. I don't know why, but my first thought wasn't that someone had broken in. It wasn't that maybe an animal had gotten into the crawl space. No, my first thought was him. The man. The one who'd been calling for days. The one who swore someone was crawling over him. It was like I could feel him in that sound. I took off the headset and just listened. The room was dead, quiet, except for that knocking. Same rhythm. Same pauses. I whispered, "Hello," before I could stop myself. The knocking didn't change. I stood up slowly, my knees trembling against the desk. Every instinct told me to get someone else in the room, but my body didn't move toward the door. Instead, I found myself standing under that exact spot in the ceiling, just staring. The knock stopped. I waited. And then one knock. A pause. Another. Another. 3 again. That time, I heard it through the headset too. Like it was bouncing back to me from a call, delayed by half a second. I swallowed hard and forced my voice steady. "Who is this?" No answer. Just a sound. I was breathing too loud. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, and I knew if I looked away, even for a second, I'd convince myself I imagined all of it. But then the voice came. Not his. A woman's. Soft. Breathless. Almost like she was right behind the mouthpiece, lips just barely parting. "I'm here." It wasn't a whisper, not exactly. More like a statement. Flat. Certain. I couldn't even think of what to say back. My mind went blank. I just stared at the ceiling while my mouth opened and closed like I was trying to remember how to speak. Then the call cut out. No goodbye. No click. Just dead air. The ceiling above me was silent again. I called it in, of course. Told the other dispatcher to send a unit. Explained exactly what I heard, what number it came from. The officers searched the crawl space above us again. Same result. Nothing but dust and insulation. But I don't think they were really looking for her. Not the way I was. They checked the caller ID logs. The number didn't exist. Not in our records. Not in any of the reverse searches. It was like the call had never happened. I tried to tell myself it could have been some kind of prank. God knows we've gotten our share of those. But I kept thinking about his voice, the man from before, the way it broke when he said, "She's right above me." And now, she was above me. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't even leave the building until sunrise. I sat at the desk with my eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for another sound, another call. It never came. But here's the thing. I can still hear it sometimes. Not when I'm here. Not even at work. But when I'm lying in bed at night, staring at the plaster above me, I swear I hear it. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. And every time, I can feel it in my chest. The sense that if I were to climb up there, if I were to open it, she wouldn't just be above me. She'd be waiting. I've taken a lot of strange calls in my years as a dispatcher. People screaming about shadows in their houses, voices coming from their walls, things they swore weren't human. Most of them you can chalk up to drugs or someone in a mental health spiral. But every once in a while, you get a call that doesn't fit into any box. A call that stays with you long after the shift is over. This one started at 2:14 in the morning. The phone lit up, the ringing sharp in the quiet of the room. My coffee had gone lukewarm, my eyes were heavy, but my voice came out steady like it always did. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, I thought the line was dead. No breathing, no static. Then a whisper. So faint, I almost thought I imagined it. There's a boy under the bed. I leaned forward, pressing my headset tighter to my ear. I'm sorry, can you say that again? There's a boy under the bed. The voice was higher this time. A child's voice. Still whispering, like they were afraid of being overheard. Okay, I said, lowering my own voice without thinking. What's your name, buddy? There was a pause. Then, Ethan. Hi, Ethan. How old are you? 7. I started jotting down notes. And where are you right now? Another pause. In my room. Can you tell me your address? I could hear him shifting, fabric rustling like he was holding the phone close. It's 1189 Maple. His words came out slow, like he had to think about each number. Good job, Ethan. Is your mom or dad home? A shaky breath. They're asleep. Okay. You said there's a boy under your bed. Can you tell me more about him? That's when his whisper dropped even lower, to the kind of voice you use when you're hiding from something. He looks like me. My pen stopped moving. What do you mean he looks like you? He has my face. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen. Kids have wild imaginations, sure. But something in his tone, it wasn't playful. It wasn't a joke. It was flat. Scared. Where's he right now? I asked. Under my bed. Ethan said, like I should have already known. He's smiling. I swallowed. Is he saying anything? Not yet. A quiet thump came through the line. A low, hollow sound like something knocking against wood. Ethan sucked in a breath. He heard me. Okay, Ethan, I want you to stay on the phone with me. Can you do that? Yes. You're doing great. I'm going to send officers to your house. They'll be there soon. I want you to stay as quiet as you can until they arrive. Okay. I typed the call details, sent it through to dispatch. The responding officers were only a few minutes out. Still, my stomach felt tight like I was the one hiding. Ethan, can you tell me what the boy is doing now? The whisper came back, trembling. He's not smiling anymore. Okay, what's his face look like now? There was a stretch of silence. Then, he's mad. Another thump. Louder this time. I clenched my jaw, scanning the timestamp on the dispatch screen, willing the officers to get there faster. Ethan, I want you to stay as still as possible. Don't let him know you're talking to me. The line went quiet. Ethan, a minute passed. Maybe more. Then, softly, he's crawling out. I heard the scrape. A slow, dragging sound, muffled but unmistakable. Ethan, listen to me. Stay calm. Help is almost there. But his breathing had picked up. Short, fast. He's standing up. He's taller than me. I could feel the hairs on my arms lifting. Ethan, he's walking to the door. I heard it then. Not from my end of the call, but from Ethan's room. Wood creaking under weight, then a quiet click like a door unlatching. Ethan, is the door open? He didn't answer. From somewhere behind him, faint but clear, another voice spoke. It was soft, careful, and it sounded exactly like Ethan's. Who are you talking to? The line rustled violently. The phone clattered. For a second, there was nothing but muffled scraping sounds, quick footsteps. Ethan, I called into the headset. No response. Then breathing. Not Ethan's shaky, high-pitched breaths. Lower, slower, close to the phone. Bye. The call ended. I sat frozen, my fingers hovering above the keyboard, the dial tone ringing in my ear. The officers were already pulling up to the house when I patched in to update them. My voice didn't sound like my own. When they went in, the place was quiet. Too quiet. They checked the parents first, both asleep in their room, groggy but unharmed. said they hadn't heard a thing. Ethan's room was empty. No sign of struggle. No open windows. Nothing out of place except for the phone lying in the middle of the carpet. The officers searched under the bed. Empty. I thought maybe Ethan had just wandered off. Kids do that, even in the middle of the night. But they canvassed the neighborhood. No footprints, no witnesses, no security cam footage of him leaving. It was like he'd never been there at all. I should have been able to let it go. Calls like this, sometimes they just end without answers. But the sound of that other voice, that's what stuck in my head. The way it didn't just sound like another kid, it sounded like him. Like someone had taken Ethan's voice, slowed it down just a little, and hollowed it out. I kept thinking about the way he said, "He looks like me." The way his tone changed when he said the boy was smiling. And then, that last word before the call ended. Bye. It wasn't a goodbye like you give to someone you know. It was final, like a door shutting. 3 days later, I got another call on my shift. This one wasn't from 1189 Maple, but it was a whisper, and it started the exact same way. "There's a boy under the bed." I didn't expect the call again. It had been a few hours since the kid's whisper rattled me. The one about the boy under the bed. I've been trying to shake it off, telling myself it was just another frightened child, probably scared of his own shadow in the dark. Dispatchers hear things like that all the time. It sticks with you for a little while, then it fades. But it didn't fade. Every time the phones went quiet, my brain replayed it. That thin, almost paper-thin voice, the slow way he said it, like every word weighed too much for him to carry. "There's a boy under my bed, and he looks just like me." It wasn't the sentence itself. It was the way it felt. Like he wasn't imagining it. Like he'd seen something. I was still staring at my desk when the line lit up again. Same general area code. My stomach tightened. 911. "What's your emergency?" Silence at first. I thought maybe it was a butt dial. Then a sound. A sharp inhale, quick like someone trying not to cry. "It's me." A voice. That voice. My hand froze over the keyboard. "Hey, is this the boy who called earlier?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "He's still here." I forced my tone calm. "Okay, I'm here with you. Are you safe right now? Are you somewhere you can stay until help arrives?" "No," he whispered. "He's copying me." I frowned. "Copying you? What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Then I heard it, this tiny muffled sob. And right after it, another sob. Same pitch. Same sound. Like an echo, but not delayed. It happened at the exact same time, just slightly quieter, like it was under something. "That's him," the boy whispered. "He does it when I do it. Everything I say, he says too." A little shiver worked up my spine. "Okay, where are you right now?" "My room," he said. "I'm on the bed. My feet are pulled up." I tapped my pen nervously. "Is anyone else home with you?" "My mom's sleeping. She works late. I didn't want to wake her up." I bit my lip. "You said this boy is under your bed? Can you see him?" "No," he said, "but I know he's there. He's lying on his back. I can hear him breathing." I almost asked how he could be sure, but then I heard it. A faint, slow inhale, then an exhale. But it wasn't coming from his phone's microphone directly. It was like it was being picked up secondhand from a space just below him. The boy whispered again. "He moves when I move. He says what I say. If I stop talking, he stops too." I swallowed, the sound loud in my headset. "All right, listen to me. I'm going to send officers to your address. I want you to stay on the bed, stay quiet if you can, and don't." There was a sound. A quiet, muffled giggle. I didn't like it. Not one bit. It wasn't playful. It was flat, monotone, like someone pretending to laugh without knowing what it meant. "That's him," the boy whispered again. His breath was shaking now. My dispatcher training kicked in. "What's your address?" But before he could answer, I heard him sniffle, and again, immediately, a second sniffle. He spoke very quietly. I don't want to say it out loud. If I do, he'll know where I live. I froze, unsure how to respond. "Do you have paper? Can you write it down for your mom?" "She's too far down the hall," he whispered. The breathing underneath him grew louder. I could hear it now without trying. I leaned forward, gripping my pen, so tight it hurt. "All right, buddy, can you hum for me? Just a little sound so I can hear." There was a pause, and then a soft hum. And then another hum. Same note. Perfectly in sync. That's when it hit me. It wasn't repeating him after he made the sound. It was doing it with him. Exactly together. The kid's voice broke. Sometimes he says something first. Then I have to say it. The hair on my arms lifted. I lowered my voice. What does he say? The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, barely audible, he said my mom doesn't know which one's real. Something inside my stomach just dropped. I heard movement, the creak of bed springs, like he was curling tighter into himself. I think you want me to go under there, the boy whispered. I nearly shouted into the mic, no. No, you stay exactly where you are. Do not go under the bed. There was silence. And then, okay, two voices said at once. Not echo, not mimicry. Two voices. One was the boy. The other was the same boy, but deeper, like it was coming from a darker place. I gripped the desk, so hard my knuckles ached. I kept him talking, kept my voice low and steady, all while typing to get officers en route. Every instinct told me to fill the air with my own voice, to not let the silence stretch. But then the boy said something strange. His mouth doesn't move the same way mine does. I blinked, thrown. What do you mean? It's like it's too wide. I can hear it open. And his teeth, they sound big. I didn't even know how teeth could sound big, but the way he said it, I could almost picture it. Too many teeth clicking together in a smile that didn't belong to a kid. I told him again the officers were close. Asked him to stay on the line. But then I heard it, a whisper from under the bed. Asked her if she could tell which one's talking. The kid whimpered. Don't. I couldn't breathe. Who's her? I asked. You, he whispered. Static hissed in my ear. The breathing underneath him grew heavier. I could hear the mattress shifting. Something was moving under there. The boy started crying for real now, and each shaky breath was perfectly mirrored. Then, suddenly, there was no mirroring, only the breathing from under the bed. Slow, deliberate, closer to the phone. The kid had stopped making noise entirely. My pulse hammered in my ears. Hello, are you there? No answer, just that slow breathing. And then, faintly, the boy's whisper. He's smiling at me. I almost dropped the headset. Somewhere down the hall, his mother must have woken up. I heard a door open. Her voice, groggy, asking what was wrong. The boy's voice called back to her, trembling. Mom. And then, second, Mom, from under the bed. Her footsteps quickened. I heard her enter the room. She said his name, confused. I could hear her moving toward him. Then she said it again, sharper, like she'd just seen something. The line went dead. I sat there with the dead tone buzzing in my headset, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I gasped for air. I flagged the call, marked it urgent, and wrote down every detail I could remember. But no part of it felt procedural. It felt wrong, like there was something I shouldn't have heard. I don't know what the officers found. I never got the report. But that night, when I went home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And when I lay down, in the dark, staring at the shadowed space under my own bed, I swear I heard breathing that I was still on the line with him when the lights from the squad car spilled through my office blinds. Two officers came in quick. I could hear their radios hissing under their jackets, their boots heavy against the hall tile. They didn't even wait for me to finish. I just pointed toward the address on my screen, told them it was a child, alone, scared, whispering about someone under his bed. They nodded once, sharp, and left. For a moment, I sat there with the headset still warm on my ear, the hum of the dispatch floor surrounding me. But the line had gone dead a few seconds earlier. No goodbye, no click, just gone. It's strange. Sometimes silence is louder than screaming. I kept replaying the last thing he'd said in my mind. He's copying me now. It didn't sound like a game. It wasn't the kind of sing-song a kid might use if they were annoyed at a sibling. It was flat, shaky, like he was trying not to move his lips too much in case the other one, the boy under the bed, saw him do it. Dispatchers aren't supposed to get attached. You learn to build a wall. But I couldn't shake the image of a kid, maybe 8, crouched on his bed in the dark, hearing his own voice come back to him from somewhere inches below. It didn't help that the address was only 8 minutes from the station. Close enough to imagine the street. Close enough to imagine the room. The officers radioed in when they got there. Dispatch, we're inside the residence now. Static. A pause. Then, kid's not here. The words didn't compute at first. I asked them to confirm. Maybe they had the wrong house, maybe the mom or dad had come home early and taken him somewhere. But then the other officer came on. His voice was lower, like he didn't want the neighbors to hear, even though he was talking into a radio. Bedrooms, it's empty. Beds flipped over. Looks like someone's been under the floor. That stuck with me. Not someone's been under the bed. Under the floor. I took my headset off and just sat there for a second. There's a rhythm to these jobs. You know how things usually play out. You know the sounds of a domestic, the patterns of a break-in, the timing of a fire call. But there's no rhythm for a kid who vanishes in the 3 minutes it takes for police to arrive. And there's definitely no rhythm for floorboards disturbed from the underside. I could hear them moving through the house in short bursts, boots thumping, then silence, then a muffled voice. I try not to picture what they were seeing. Finally, one of them radioed back. No sign of the child. Room's weird. Got scratch marks on the floorboards. Not claw marks, more like nails. Human. I think that was the moment my stomach turned cold. The thing about scratches from nails? They're usually shallow. These, he said, dug deep. I asked if the family was there. Negative. No car in the driveway. No signs of forced entry. The house itself was quiet. Too quiet, according to one of them. No hum from the fridge. No ticking clock. Like the place was holding its breath. When they finally left the bedroom to check the rest of the house, they didn't close the door all the way. And later, when I was going over the body cam footage in the report system, I saw something I wish I hadn't. It wasn't obvious. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking at that door frame the whole time. But as they were walking down the hall, the door to the boys' bedroom eased open. Just a couple of inches. Like something inside wanted to watch them leave. I asked the sergeant if they'd checked under the floorboards. He said yes, at least as much as they could without tools. They'd lifted the loose boards, shined their lights down. Nothing but dirt and cobwebs. But he said something else, too. Said there was a smell. Like the air down there's been breathed in and out too many times, he told me. That didn't make sense at first. Air is just air. But I think I understood. When they cleared the scene, protocol said we were done. Kids missing. Turns into a different kind of case. Detectives, not dispatchers. But I couldn't stop replaying his voice in my head. He hadn't been screaming when he told me about the boy under the bed. He'd been whispering. And then, after a pause, the other one whispered back. Not a word I could make out. Just the rhythm of it. Like someone standing on the other side of a mirror, trying to match your reflection. Later that night, when the station got quiet and I was alone with my coffee and the low buzz of the monitors, I pulled up the recording of the call. We're not supposed to. Not without clearance. But I told myself I just wanted to check if I'd missed anything. I put my headset on, turned the volume low, and hit play. It started the way I remembered, the soft, scared voice, the pause between words. Then him saying, he's copying me now. But this time I noticed something else. A fraction of a second after each of his words, there was a sound. Not exactly his voice. Not exactly anyone's. Like it was struggling to form the words right. And the breathing, that was the worst part. Whoever, whatever, was under there, it wasn't just mimicking his words. It was mimicking his breath. I leaned back in my chair, listening over and over, until something on the third replay made me rip the headset off. It wasn't the boy breathing first. It was the other one. Like the thing under the bed was leading, and the boy was following without even realizing. I didn't tell anyone. Some things you say out loud, people start looking at you like you're not fit for the job. But I kept thinking about those disturbed floorboards. They hadn't been broken. They'd been lifted, carefully, almost politely. Like someone didn't want to wake the house. 3 days later, a new call came in. Different voice this time, a woman's, frantic. She was in the same neighborhood. Said her daughter had been telling her about the girl in the closet, who looked just like her. I passed the details along to patrol, my hand shaking a little more than I wanted it to. Because if it was the same thing, then it hadn't stayed in that wrong bedroom. It was still moving, still looking for someone to copy. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone found the floor disturbed, it wouldn't be empty underneath. I didn't think I'd ever hear that address again. Not so soon. Not after what happened the first time. We'd closed the case hours earlier, or at least, that's what everyone told themselves. The child was gone. The room was torn apart. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. Just a report in the system, a handful of shaken officers, and me sitting at my desk, trying not to replay that call in my head. It was almost 3 in the morning when the phone lit up again. Same street, same number, same house. My stomach dropped. I didn't even have to look at the caller ID. I knew. I put my headset on with hands that felt too light, almost detached from me. The call connected instantly. No static, no delay. 911, what's your emergency? There was no crying this time. No shaky little voice begging me to come quick. What came through was calm. Too calm. They're not looking in the right place. It was a child's voice. A boy. But the tone, the way each word landed, it was wrong. Hello. I didn't breathe for a second. Who is this? I asked, already feeling the hairs on my arms stand on end. A pause. Then almost playfully, I'm the one from under the bed. I didn't move. My mind went completely blank for a beat, then came back all at once with a rush of cold adrenaline. I'd heard the phrase before, hours earlier, when the first child had whispered it between sobs. But that boy, he was gone. The officers had searched. The house was empty. Except it wasn't. Where are you right now? I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. Another pause. A breathy giggle. I'm still in the house. I reached for the nearest officer's extension, but the boy's voice pulled me back. They looked in the wrong bedroom. His words sank into me like ice water. Wrong bedroom. It wasn't just a game. He was telling someone that he was hiding in a place they hadn't touched. My mind went to the floorboards in that first room, the way they'd been pried up, the dirt packed underneath disturbed. But this wasn't that room. What's your name? I tried. You already know, he said. You said it earlier. That made my mouth go dry, because I hadn't said any names. Not on a first call. Not to him. And still, somehow, he spoke as if we'd talked before. As if he'd been there the whole time. I motioned to the on-shift sergeant, mouthing the address. He picked up instantly, already ordering unit back to the scene. The boy kept talking, softer now, almost a whisper. The other one, the first one, he's still here too. I wanted to ask what he meant, but my throat felt tight. He spoke before I could. He's right next to me, but he's not moving. Every part of me screamed to hang up, to wait for the officers to get there and deal with whatever this was. But I couldn't. If I stopped listening, I might miss something that mattered. Something that could save that kid, or whoever was still in there. Can you tell me what room you're in? I asked. Silence stretched on for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, you're looking for me upstairs. But I'm not upstairs. Not upstairs. The house was small, 2 bedrooms up top, kitchen and living room down below. The basement had been locked, the officers said. No signs of anyone inside. But maybe they hadn't forced it open. Maybe they'd assumed. The boy laughed again. Not loud. Just enough for me to feel the air in the line shift. You think I live under beds? That's not true. Beds are just doors. I gripped the edge of my desk. Beds are just doors. I didn't know if it was nonsense or if he was telling me the truth in some way I couldn't understand. I hear them, he said suddenly. Who? I asked. The men with the flashlights. My pulse quickened. The responding unit had arrived. They're walking wrong, he murmured, like they don't want to wake the floor. I could hear faint noises in the background now. Boots on wood. Dull voices, too far away to make out. They don't know I'm listening, the boy said. They don't know I'm right here. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, straining to hear anything beyond his voice. Then, faintly, the sound of something scraping. Wood on wood. A hinge or latch, maybe. They opened it, the boy whispered. They opened my door. I thought I'd hear shouting next, maybe commands, the rush of movement when they found him. Instead, nothing. Just the boy's slow, steady breathing. Then, they're not moving either. The line went dead. I didn't have time to think. I dialed the unit's radio channel, but there was no answer. Dispatch procedure kicked in. Send backup, check for signals, don't assume the worst. But my mind was already filling the silence with the only thing worse than the worst, that there wasn't going to be anything left to find. Minutes dragged. Backup arrived. The radio crackled alive. We're inside. One officer reported, voice tight. First unit's here, but they're just standing in the basement. Both of them, staring at the wall. I asked the question before I could stop myself. Is the child with them? Another pause. Then, no, there's no one else here. My chest sank. They say they didn't see anyone come in, the officer continued. They just walked down here. They can't explain why. They don't respond to their names. EMS was called in. The first unit was let out. Neither officer remembered why they went into the basement. Neither remembered hearing a child's voice. They both said the same thing, almost word for word. It felt like someone was talking behind the wall. The house was taped off again. Evidence techs went over every inch. No signs of forced entry. No footprints except the officers. No fingerprints that shouldn't have been there. But the basement wall, it was wrong. Behind an old bookshelf, there was a section where the wood panels didn't match. Fresh nails. New paint. They pulled it apart. There was a narrow crawl space, barely wide enough for a grown man to slide into. Inside was an old mattress on the dirt, a child's blanket, and a small wooden box. The box was empty. No boy. No trace of him at all. The incident was filed away like so many others. Unexplained, unverified, likely prank call. But I know what I heard, and I know the sound of someone pretending to be a child versus whatever that was. The last thing the boy said still circles in my head when the shift gets quiet. Beds are just doors. I don't know if he meant it as a threat or a promise. But sometimes when the calls slow down and the building gets too quiet, I swear I can hear breathing that isn't mine. Not through the phone. Closer. Like it's already in a room. That I've heard people say that if you work in dispatch long enough, the calls start to blur together. Voices become background noise. Stories bleed into each other. It's all just people in panic. I thought that was true. Until the night, I heard my own voice on the line. And it wasn't a recording. It was breathing, talking, answering me. It was me. That night, the floor was quiet. I had the midnight shift. Just me, a stale cup of coffee, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. The kind of stillness where you almost forget the phone could ring at any second. My eyes were burning from staring at the call log for too long, and I was tracing the ridges in my headset cord with my thumb when the line lit up. I hit the button. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. A little static. Then, hello. The word was soft, but clear. My gut clenched. I didn't know why at first. It wasn't threatening, just wrong. It was wrong because the voice sounded exactly like mine. Same tone, same pitch. Even the way I drag my vowels a little when I'm tired. I almost laughed at myself. Maybe it was someone I knew. Maybe Ahmad or Ollie were playing some kind of late-night joke. But nobody gets through on the emergency line unless they're calling 911 directly. And the number on my screen wasn't a contact. It was blocked. Unknown origin. Can you state your emergency? I said, keeping my voice level. There was a breath on the other end. Slow. Measured. You're not supposed to be there, the voice said. I felt the hairs on my arm stand up. Sir, I started. I'm not, sir. The voice cut in sharply. I'm you. I froze. Not figuratively. I mean, my whole body went rigid, like my muscles had been replaced with ice. I couldn't think of what to say. I'm the real one, the voice continued. You're the wrong one. I forced a little laugh, tried to push the fear back into my chest. Okay, I think you've got the wrong number. You don't think I know what number this is? You don't think I know the screens in front of you? The chipped mug by your left hand? The red thread on your shirt sleeve? I glanced down, and there it was, a tiny red fiber clinging to my cuff. I hadn't noticed it before. I turned in my chair, scanning the room. My heartbeat was climbing. My throat felt dry. Where are you? I asked. A pause. Then, look behind you. I whipped around so fast my headset cord tugged against my neck. But the room was empty. Just rows of unoccupied desks. Chairs pushed in neatly. The reflection of my own pale face in the darkened window. I'm not there right now, the voice said, almost gently. But I will be. I gripped the mic closer to my mouth. If this is some kind of threat, It's not a threat, the voice said. It's a fact. And then the line went dead. Protocol says you logged the call. So I typed it out, everything word for word, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I even wrote caller identical to dispatcher voice, which looked ridiculous in all caps on the report. But what else could I put? Caller is me? Caller claims reality mix-up? It sounded insane. I told myself I'd forget about it by morning. Just another weird call. People prank 911 all the time. They make fake emergencies, yell slurs, breathe heavy into the phone. But no one's ever mimicked my voice before. No one's ever described something in a room with me that they couldn't possibly see. About half an hour later, another call came in. Different number. Still blocked. I picked up, trying to keep my voice steady. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. Then, you shouldn't have ignored me. My heart dropped. Same voice. Same exact me. I kept my tone flat. What is your location? I'm closer now, they said. I think you can feel it. And suddenly I could. I can't explain it. It wasn't like someone was physically there, but there was this weight in the air, a heaviness pressing at the back of my skull. My own breathing started to sound foreign in my ears, like it was coming from somewhere else. Tell me your name, I said. You already know it. Then say it. A small laugh. Why? So you can hear in your own voice. I was gripping the edge of my desk so hard that my fingers ached. I didn't know if I should hang up. Part of me wanted to, but part of me was terrified that if I did, the line would ring again, and each time, the voice would be closer. What do you want? I whispered. I want my place back. I didn't get a chance to respond. In the background of the call, I heard something, a faint scrape, then a muffled clunk like was shifting underweight. You remember that sound? The voice said. I didn't. Not at first. But then my mind pulled it up from somewhere far back. A memory I didn't know I had. Being a kid, hiding in the attic crawl space when I was supposed to be asleep, feeling the boards creak under me, listening to my parents call my name in the dark. My stomach twisted. How do you know that? I asked. You know how. And then the line cut again. I sat there for a long time, staring at the monitor. I thought about calling my supervisor, but what was I going to say? Hey, my evil twin is prank calling the emergency line. No, I just stayed quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in the room, that something was shifting just at the edges of my vision, waiting for me to catch it. The third call came at 3:14 a.m. By then, the coffee was cold. My nerves were fried. I've been glancing over my shoulder every few minutes, scanning the corners of the room, the doorway, the reflection in the glass. I answered on the first ring. 911, what's your emergency? You're tired, the voice said. Your eyes hurt. You keep blinking because you're trying not to see me. I swallowed hard. You need to stop calling this line. You need to stop taking my place. Something shifted in the static then. A low, warped sound, like breathing through water. I realized it wasn't background noise. It was the room. The hum of the lights, the faint whir of the HVAC, even the ringing in my own ears. All of it was slowing down, stretching. I can prove it, the voice said. Prove what? That I'm you. And then I heard my own voice, not just a voice like mine, but the exact tone and words I had spoken seconds ago, repeating back in real time. Prove what? I froze. It was perfect. Every hesitation, every syllable, even the way my throat clicked when I swallowed before speaking. It was me. You're listening to yourself, the voice said. But you're not the one speaking anymore. I yanked the headset off and stared at it like it might start moving. The line was still open. I could hear faint breathing from the earpiece on the desk. I didn't want to touch it, but I didn't want to leave it either. Finally, I picked it up. Where are you? I said. There was a pause. Behind you. I turned, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing by the window. Same height, same shoulders, same face. But it wasn't right. The eyes were too dark, too still, and when I blinked, the reflection was gone. I whipped back toward my monitor, and the line was dead again. I didn't take another call that night. I just sat there until the shift ended, waiting for the lights to feel normal again, for the hum in my ears to match the real world. But it never did. When I clocked out, I looked at the empty seats around me and thought, if they can call me here, they can call me anywhere. And maybe next time, they won't be on the other end of the phone. They'll be where I'm sitting, but I couldn't get the first call out of my head. That voice, my voice, it hadn't been a glitch. I knew that much now. It hadn't been a trick of the line or a bad recording bouncing back in my headset. It had been me. And I don't mean it sounded like me. I mean, when I heard it, something deep in my brain recognized it the same way you recognize your own face in the mirror. The exact same tone, the same pauses, even the same small stutter I get when I'm nervous. But I tried to move on. I went back to taking regular calls, forcing myself to believe that whatever that was, it was over. It wasn't. 3 nights later, I got another one. It was around 2:15 a.m. The floor was dead quiet, that strange, heavy silence you only get in the middle of the night shift. The kind that makes you hyper-aware of your own breathing. I was staring at the dispatch screen when the line lit up. No number, no location, just an incoming call blinking at me like it was waiting for me specifically. I put on my headset and answered. 911, what's your... Don't say it. Just listen. I froze. The voice in my ear was my own again. Calm but low, like I was speaking with my mouth too close to the mic. Who is this? I asked, my throat tightening. It's me. You. But I don't have long. This line won't stay open for more than a minute. I have to tell you what's going to happen. Every part of me wanted to hang up, but I didn't. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, waiting for an address to type, but none came. In 42 minutes, you'll get a call from a woman in a 2-story blue house on Belmore Street. She'll be screaming. Her daughter will be gone. You'll hear her running up the stairs. You'll want to tell her to get out of the house, but you won't, because you'll recognize the sound she's hearing. And you'll freeze, just like I did. My pulse was pounding in my ears. What sound? There was a pause. You already know the sound. You just haven't heard it yet. The words didn't make sense, but something about them did. Like a dream you forget, but still carry the feeling of when you wake up. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because it's going to happen. And when it does, you'll think you can change it. But you won't. The voice was fading now, crackling like a bad radio station. One more thing. Wait. But then the line cut. Dead air. No number. No trace. I stared at my screen, my hands cold and damp. 42 minutes. I checked the clock. 2:18 a.m. That would make it exactly 3 a.m. The rational part of me told me it was a prank. Someone with a voice modulator. Someone who had access to my voice recordings. But the way it had spoken, the familiarity in the breathing, the small catch in the throat, it wasn't just close. It was right. Still, I tried to push it aside. I took another call about a drunk driver. One about a suspicious car parked near a warehouse. I kept glancing at the time, though. 2:59. The phone lit up. No number. No location. My hand hovered over the answer button for a second before I forced myself to pick up. 911. What's your emergency? A woman's voice exploded in my ear, frantic sobbing. Please. Someone took my daughter. She was just here. I want to check on her, and the bed was empty. My chest tightened. Ma'am, where are you right now? Belmore Street. 2:18. Please hurry. The name hit me like a brick. Belmore Street. I started typing, my hands shaking. Is anyone else in the house with you? I don't know. I heard something upstairs. I think she's upstairs. Ma'am, I need you to... But I stopped, because in the background, faint and almost too low to notice, I heard it. A sound that made my skin crawl. A slow, deliberate creak. Then another, like someone shifting their weight, step by step, on old wooden stairs. But it wasn't just that. I knew that sound. I remembered it. I didn't know how, but it was like a memory had been planted in my head. I could see it, the shadow at the top of the stairs, the feeling of being watched, the smell of something faintly metallic like blood on a coin. The woman was still yelling, but her voice was getting farther away. She was running upstairs. Ma'am, stop, don't. And then there was a loud crash, a gasp, and silence. Ma'am, are you there? Hello. No answer, just the faint hum of the line. I stayed there, listening, until the connection finally dropped. The responding officers got there 9 minutes later. They found the front door open. The woman was gone. The little girl was gone. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. Nothing. I should have told them about the first call, about the warning. But how was I supposed to explain it without sounding insane? Hey, my future self called me and told me this was going to happen. Yeah. That would have gone over well. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. I kept replaying the sound in my head over and over. Not just the creaking, but the weight of it. The slow patience of someone, or something, moving without any need to hurry. And the worst part was, the memory of it felt older than that night. Like I'd heard it before in some other place. Maybe my childhood home. Maybe when I was lying in bed, thinking the house was empty. 2 days later, I got another call. Same blocked number. Same dead air before the voice came through. It happened again, didn't it? I gripped the edge of the desk. Who are you? I told you. I'm you. And this is only the second one. The second what? There was a pause. You think it's random? that it's just emergencies. But they're connected, all of them. And each time, it gets closer. Closer to what? To you. The words hit me harder than I expected. My voice, or his, or ours, sounded almost sorry. Why can't you just tell me what's going to happen? Because it doesn't matter. You'll remember it too late. Just like I did. I tried to think of something, anything, that would break through the cryptic garbage. If you're really me, prove it. Tell me something no one else knows. There was the faintest sound of breathing. My breathing. When you were 12, you woke up one night and saw someone standing in your doorway. You thought it was your dad, but then it leaned way too far and its head touched the frame. You pulled the blanket over your face until morning. You never told anyone. I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't thought about that night in years. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? I want you to listen. The next one is soon. And when it happens, you'll see something you're not supposed to see. The line crackled. Don't let it recognize you. And then it was gone. I just sat there, my hand trembling against the mouse. My reflection in the monitor looked pale, almost unfamiliar. Not because I didn't recognize it, but because for a moment, I thought I might blink before I did, that I used to think that forgetting things came gradually, like a slow leak in a bucket. But that night, it was more like someone cut a hole straight through me, and the pieces just fell out. It started like every other late shift, dim light from the monitors, the faint hum of the HVAC, that sterile smell the call center always had. I'd been working dispatch for 6 years, and I'd learned how to separate myself from the chaos on the other end of the line. It was the only way to stay sane. But ever since the first me called, I've been carrying this heaviness. That voice, my voice, had gotten under my skin. I could still hear the exact way he breathed between words. It wasn't an impression of me. It was me. And when he said he was the real one, I laughed it off to the supervisor. Told him it was a prank. But it didn't feel like a prank. By the third night after that call, I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time. My head felt foggy, my stomach hollow. Every time the phone rang, I braced myself. And then it happened again. The call came in at 2:14 a.m. Same unknown number as before. My hand hovered over the mouse, thinking about letting it roll to another operator, but my training took over. I answered. 911, what's your emergency? The silence stretched just long enough to make me think maybe no one was there. Then, you're starting to forget, aren't you? I froze. It was my voice. Same pitch, same tone. Only slower this time, like he was savoring every word. I'm not doing this with you, I said, my voice tight. If you don't have an emergency, you don't remember your birthday. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. My first instinct was to blurt it out to prove him wrong. But when I reached for it, it wasn't there. I could feel the outline of it like something stuck between my teeth, but no numbers came. Just a blank. What? I whispered. See, he said. You gave it to me. I felt the skin on my arms rise. What the hell are you talking about? You've been bleeding pieces for days now. Little things. Dates. Numbers. The color of your front door. My name's on them now. I gripped the desk, staring at the green, blinking cursor on my screen. This is a recorded line. Keep talking, and I'll have the cops trace it. He laughed. Not my laugh exactly. A slightly better version of my laugh. Like mine had always been a little forced, but his came out smooth. I already told you. I'm you. Just earlier. Cleaner. You're the draft. I'm the final copy. I want to hang up. God, I should have hung up. But I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't move. What do you want? I asked. To finish the swap. Something shifted in my head, then like someone slid open a drawer and started pulling things out. I could feel them go. The street I grew up on. The smell of my mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings. The way my dog's fur felt when I was 6. Gone. And the awful part was, I didn't feel grief. I felt light. Empty in a way that was almost peaceful. He spoke again, but now his words carried something heavier. Not just sound, but weight. Your first girlfriend was Emily Crane. You met at the library. You were 14. You kissed her behind the shelves near the biographies. You don't remember that anymore. And just like that, the memory vanished. I didn't even know who Emily was. What are you doing to me? I said, my voice cracking. I told you, he said. You're not the one who gets to keep them. I leaned back in my chair, pressing my hand to my face, trying to pull something solid into focus. My apartment address. Easy. I'd written it down 1,000 times. Except now, it wasn't there either. I couldn't even picture the building. I need you to stop, I said. Right now. You think this is something you control? He asked. You gave me permission the first time you picked up. No. Yes. You listened. And once you heard me, the line went both ways. I tried to slam the receiver down, but my arm moved sluggishly, like I was underwater. My heart was pounding, but my body felt far away. You're getting slower, he said. It's almost done. Why me? I asked. My voice was shaking, my throat dry. Because I needed someone close enough. Someone I could step into without anyone noticing. You've been perfect. A ringing started in my ears, high and sharp, like feedback from the headset. It made my teeth hurt. You feel it, don't you? He whispered. The space opening up. Every memory I take leaves a little more room for me. I don't want this, I said. My chest felt tight, like something was pressing on it from the inside. He ignored me. You'll still be here. You'll still answer the calls. But you won't be you anymore. And no one will notice. They'll hear my voice, my words, my laugh, and they'll think you've always been me. I wanted to scream, to pull the headset off and throw it. But my hands, they weren't moving. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. I couldn't remember my own name. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My tongue felt heavy. My name was right there, hovering, and then it wasn't. Just a gap. I have it now, he said. Feels good. I started to cry, not loud, just this soft, pathetic sound I didn't even recognize as mine. You'll get used to it, he said. The quiet, the stillness. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. The ringing in my ears was so loud now, I could barely hear him. The monitors around me blurred, the lights dimmed. I could feel my mind folding in on itself. And then, just before it all went black, he said one last thing. Next shift, I'll be the one picking up, and you'll be the one calling. I woke up slumped in my chair. The call timer on my screen read midnight. No active line. My headset was in my lap. I looked around the room, trying to anchor myself. The bland beige walls, the sticky keyboard keys, the smell of burnt coffee from the break room. Familiar, but distant. I reached for my notepad to write down what happened, but my hand froze halfway. Because I didn't know how to sign my name, IT happened the moment I said his name. The line went dead. Not static, not the polite click of someone hanging up. Just gone. Like the phone had been ripped out of the world. I sat there staring at my console, headset pressed so tight against my ear it hurt. My own breathing filled the silence. Too loud, too fast. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. Because I knew. He'd told me this would happen. Every word. The chair beneath me suddenly felt too small, the room too bright. The only sound in dispatch was the low hum of the overhead fluorescents, and even that sounded wrong. Like the pitch had changed when the call ended. I looked at the clock on my screen. 3:42 a.m. That was when it was supposed to start. I didn't realize my hand was shaking until I saw the cursor quivering over the call log. I hadn't typed a single note from the conversation. Not one. My fingers had hovered over the keys the whole time, but they'd felt disconnected, like they belonged to someone else. My headset felt heavier now, like it was dragging me forward. I forced myself to look at the CAD system, the map, the units, the list of active calls. Nothing. All quiet. I told myself it meant he'd been wrong, that the things he said wouldn't happen, that maybe he was just another unstable late-night caller who got into my head. But then the screen flickered. Just once. So fast I almost thought I imagined it. When it came back, there was a new call flashing red on my board. Incident type, structure fire. Location, 28 Alder Lane. Call time, 3 hours, 42 minutes, and 17 seconds. My stomach turned cold. That was the first one. The location wasn't random. I knew that address, not from my call history, not from work. I knew it because it was my old house, the one I grew up in. I just sat there, staring at the screen like it had made a mistake. But CAD doesn't make mistakes. The incident notes were already filling in, line by line. Caller reports, smoke visible from upstairs window. No answer at the door. Neighbors knocking, no response. I couldn't breathe, because I knew who was inside. I hadn't lived there in years, but my mom still did. She'd been asleep when I called her earlier tonight. I remember the sound of her voice, drowsy and warm, telling me to get some rest. And now, 30 minutes later, the system was telling me her house was on fire. The voice had said there would be 3 events, and that the first one would be mine. I didn't even have to think. I routed the nearest units, E42, R14, and typed the dispatch as fast as I could. My fingers finally worked again, but my mind was unraveling. I couldn't shake the thought. This isn't a coincidence. This is exactly what he said. While the units responded, I kept watching the clock. The next one was supposed to happen at 3:47. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't stop looking. At 3 hours, 46 minutes, and 58 seconds, the map zoomed. Without me touching it, a new pin appeared. Incident type, traffic collision, unknown injury. Location, corner of County 9 and Briar Hill Road. Call time, 3 hours, 47 minutes, and 1 second. I felt my body lock up, because I knew that intersection too. I drove through it every single day on my way home from work. And the vehicle description coming in from the caller. It was my car. Same make, same color. Only it couldn't be. My car was in the lot outside. The incident notes filled themselves in, almost like someone else was typing them. Driver unconscious at the wheel. Heavy damage to front end. Airbag deployed. My ears rang. I pressed my palm to my forehead, like I could push the sound away. I checked the lot's security cam feed through the internal system. My car was still there, parked under the yellow sodium lights. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. The license plate looked blurred. The color, off somehow like it was fading in and out of gray. And then the video froze. I switched back to CAD, and the last line on the incident read, "Pulse weak." My pulse felt weak too. I didn't realize I was whispering no over and over until my headset crackled. Not with the call, with breathing. Slow, steady. Not mine. I almost ripped the headset off, but the breathing stopped. And then the third call appeared. Incident type, unauthorized entry, occupied residence. Location, 1724 Willow Bend Road. Call time, 3 hours, 52 minutes, and 9 seconds. I didn't know the address. But when I clicked the details, the listed residence name hit me like ice water. It was my name, not my mom, not some cousin. Me. And there was a note in the incident file, already filled in. Resident reports seeing someone in living room, but caller cannot describe intruder. Says he has my face. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That wasn't my current address, but I knew that living room. The pale blue couch, the leaning bookshelf, the chipped coffee table. I knew it because I'd dreamed about it before. For years, I'd had this recurring dream of a house I'd never been in. Always from the same angle, standing in the hallway, looking into that living room while someone sat on the couch. In the dream, the person always looked up, and it was always me. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening when the notes updated again. Intruder still present. Resident has retreated to bedroom. Caller whispering he's at the door. My mouth went dry. I wanted to route officers to do something, but my hands wouldn't move. Because if I sent someone, what would they find? The clock on my screen rolled over to 3:53, and every monitor in dispatch went black. For a second, there was nothing, just the dark glass of the screens reflecting my own face back at me. But then, slowly, one by one, the monitors came back. Only, they weren't showing CAD anymore. They were showing live feeds. Not from our cameras. From inside that living room. The angle was exactly the same as in my dream. The pale blue couch, the leaning bookshelf, and sitting there, looking straight into the camera, was me. Not tired, stressed, 3 a.m. me. Not headset in uniform me. This other me was smiling. And I swear, the smile got wider. I tore my headset off and stood up, the legs of my chair scraping the floor. The sound made my coworkers look up, but when I looked around, there were no coworkers. Every desk was empty. Every chair pushed in. The entire dispatch floor was silent except for my breathing. I didn't remember them leaving. The screens kept showing him, me, sitting in that living room. He tilted his head, like he was listening to something. Then he mouthed a word. I couldn't hear it. The clock above the main board ticked to 3:54. And in the corner of the feed, the bedroom door in that house creaked open. Someone stepped out. It was me. Again. But this one looked exactly how I felt. Pale, shaking, terrified. The me on the couch stood up, and the feed cut to black. My CAD screens came back instantly. No incident logs. No active calls. No record of anything that had just happened. The clock read 3:55, and then the phone rang that I wasn't supposed to be in the records room that night. Technically, it wasn't even part of my shift. I just wrapped a 12-hour rotation on the main floor and was supposed to clock out, go home, and sleep like a normal human being. But I couldn't. I've been jittery the entire day. That gnawing new job energy that doesn't go away even when the work is over. My head was too full. My hands still felt wired to the headset. It's strange. Most people picture 911 work as nonstop adrenaline. Screaming calls, sirens, chaos. But most of the time, it's just sitting there waiting, listening to a humming line and your own breathing while your mind tries to fill in the quiet with something worse. That's probably why I wandered. The records room wasn't even locked. Just a narrow door at the far end of the hall, the paint chipped around the handle from years of being swung open too hard. I'd never been inside before. You wouldn't think a dispatch center would have an archive like a library or museum, but apparently we do. Floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with bankers' boxes, old binders, dusty plastic bins. It smelled like paper that had been left in a damp attic for too long. The light was dim, yellow. My footsteps sounded too loud on the linoleum. I told myself I was just curious, just looking. But the truth is, I was looking for something to distract me. Something older than me. Something that had nothing to do with the calls still looping in my head from earlier. That's when I saw it. Low shelf, almost hidden in the shadows. A box with no label. Not cardboard like the others. It was one of those old, heavy-duty plastic cases. The kind you'd see in the back of a teacher's closet in the 90s, stuffed with VHS tapes for rainy day movie time. Only this one was smaller, about the size of a toolbox. The latches were stiff, metal, a little rusted. When I cracked it open, dust lifted in a soft gray cloud. Inside, nestled in that green foam padding, were cassette tapes. Real, actual cassettes. Thick black plastic, spools of brown magnetic tape glinting faintly in the low light. Each one had a strip of masking tape along the edge, and each strip had writing on it. Not neat, typewritten labels. Handwritten. The writing was hard to read. Faded. Some numbers, some words. July 14th, 92/rain on one. 3:17 a.m./lake on another. Some were just single names. None of them had call log numbers. Every call that comes into dispatch is logged. That's the rule. No exceptions. It's automatic now. Software assigns a number. The audio gets stored in the database. You can pull it up anytime. Even before that, back when they used tapes, everything got tagged, logged, stored with a case file. These had nothing. I don't know why, but my pulse picked up. There was a dusty old player on a top shelf. One of those chunky silver ones with big square buttons that clunk when you press them. I set it down on the nearest table and fed the first tape in. The plastic clicked shut like a jaw. The player whined, the reels turning, and then static. Not the clean, crisp kind you hear on the radio. This was wet like static underwater. Then a voice. It was a man. His tone was low, urgent. "I can't see the end of it," he said. There was a pause, like maybe the dispatcher on the other end was asking a question. I couldn't hear them, only the caller. "It just keeps going. There's no end. I've been walking since." His voice broke. The tape hissed. Then, more quietly, like he was talking to himself. "I think I'm the only one left." The tape clicked and stopped. That was it. I just sat there, my finger hovering over rewind, my mouth dry. I told myself it was nothing. Probably some half-erased recording of a real call, the other side missing. But it didn't sound like a normal 911 call. There was no panic, no yelling. The man sounded tired, like someone telling a bedtime story they didn't want to finish. I popped it out, grabbed another. This one was labeled Gin/fog. The player clicked, hissed. Footsteps first. Crunching gravel, slow. Then a woman's voice, whispering. They're back again. Pause. They never look the same twice. I think they're learning. The rest was just breathing until the tape stopped. I should have stopped there. I should have closed the box, shoved it back where I found it, and pretended I'd never seen it. But there was this strange pull, like the box wasn't just full of tapes, but pieces of something, and I wanted to know what. I went through 5 more before I realized I'd lost all sense of time. One was just rain hitting metal for 3 minutes. One had a kid's voice singing softly, no words, just a tune. One was bad. It was labeled noon. The voice was a man's, but wrong. Like someone speaking into a fan, stretched and warped. "I'll be at the door soon," it said. I felt my stomach knot. "It's not locked, is it?" I stopped it there. I don't know why, but I couldn't listen to another second. I looked down at the player. My finger was still on the stop button, white-knuckled. My breath felt too loud in the little room. Somewhere down the hall, the clock ticked over to midnight. I hadn't realized how quiet the rest of the building was until then. That was when I noticed something. The box wasn't full. There were empty slots in the foam, spaces shaped exactly for cassettes, but nothing there. 3 of them gone. I remember staring at those gaps longer than I should have, thinking stupid things like, maybe someone's still adding to this. Maybe it isn't finished. That was when the light in the room flickered. Just once quick. But it was enough for me to stand up fast, heart thudding. I shoved the last tape back in the box, slammed it shut. The latch stuck for a second before snapping closed. My fingers felt clumsy. As I turned toward the door, I thought I heard something soft, muffled under the hum of the old fluorescent light. It sounded like a voice. Not from the hallway. Not from the room. From a box. A low, drawn-out whisper, impossible to make out, like words in another language. I didn't open it again. I just left. But that night, lying in bed, my mind kept replaying those gaps in the foam. Those 3 missing tapes. And I kept thinking, what if they weren't missing? What if they just haven't happened yet? I thought maybe the first tape was a mistake. An old test recording, maybe something left behind before the system went digital. That was the only explanation that made sense in my head. But there were 15 more tapes in that box. All unmarked. All dusty. And they felt heavy in my hands, like each one carried more than just plastic and tape inside. That night, after my shift, I took the box home. I shouldn't have. The tapes were technically property of the department, but no one had told me what they were. No one even seemed to know they existed. And if I left them there, someone might throw them out. Something told me they weren't meant to be thrown out. I sat at my kitchen table with my old cassette player, the one I used in high school for recording music off the radio, and slid the second tape in. The hiss came first. That soft, constant static, like the sound of a seashell pressed to your ear. Then a voice. It was a woman, breathing fast, whispering like she was trying not to be heard. I don't know the address. It's the Willow Motel. Off 43. Room 6. He's outside the door. He's got something in his hands. I frowned. Willow Motel. I'd driven that stretch of 43 dozens of times. There was no Willow Motel. Not now. The voice kept going, getting shakier. He knocked once. Just once. And then he stopped. But he's still there. I can hear him breathing. She paused. The tape hissed louder. Then, 3 sharp knocks. Even though I knew it was a recording, my heart jumped in my chest. Her whisper got smaller. "He knows I'm talking to you." A sound cut her off. Not loud. Just a soft, wet dragging noise. And then the tape clicked off. I sat there for a long time, just listening to the empty player, like maybe she'd start talking again. But she didn't. The next morning, I typed Willow Motel into Google. I dug through old maps. Nothing. No listing, no record, not even in archives. It was like she called from somewhere that had never existed. The third tape was worse. A man's voice, deep and slow, like he was in shock. "It's Highway 12, near the mile marker with the bullet holes. The field's full of them. I thought they were sleeping, but they're all standing." I replayed that part twice. Standing. He kept talking. "They don't move. They just look." I drove past, but I couldn't make myself keep going. I parked down the road. I think they're waiting for me to come back. I could hear his hands shaking against the receiver. They're all facing the same way, and it's not toward the road. I didn't know what that meant until the tape ended abruptly with the sound of a car, door slamming, and a muffled, distant scream. When I looked up Highway 12 in the dispatch database, the closest match was over 70 miles away from here. But there was no bullet hole mile marker. No reports of bodies, standing or otherwise, in any field. No accident reports, No missing persons matching his voice. Like the call had never happened. By the fifth tape, I'd stopped looking for rational explanations. It was a kid this time. He couldn't have been older than 8. My mom's, she's in the bathtub. She's not coming out. The water's, it's black. I gripped the table, leaning closer. It smells bad. Like metal. She told me not to open my eyes, but I did. He went quiet for a second. There's a hand. Coming out of her mouth. My stomach turned, but I didn't stop the tape. She's holding it. Like, she doesn't want it to leave. It's pulling on her teeth. They're coming out. A loud splash, and then silence. The kind that feels thick. Then a whisper, lower than before. Something's in the house now. It's not my mom. The tape clicked off before I could even breathe again. Each night, I listened to more. Each one felt heavier than the last, like the box itself was started to weigh on me. None of them were in the system. No audio logs. No type call reports. No case numbers. It was like these voices had been buried. And then I noticed something. When I rewound the tapes, every single one had the same faint sound before the voice started. A sound like wind through a tunnel, but deeper, slower, almost like breathing. One evening, after my shift, I stayed late in the archives room. No one uses it anymore. It's a dusty backspace with old binders and yellowed maps of the county. I started cross-referencing the locations from the tapes. Willow Motel, Highway 12 bullet marker. The oldest maps, they had them. The motel had been on the corner of 43 and a side road that doesn't exist anymore. Torn down in 1972 after a fire. Highway 12 did have a mile marker with bullet holes, removed in the 80s after a series of unsolved shootings. But in every case, the places were gone. The roads were named. The landmarks erased, like someone wanted them forgotten. That night, I put in tape 8. This one was almost too quiet to hear. The caller's voice was low, like he was speaking from under a blanket. It's all of them. In the church basement. Just standing. No faces. Just holes. I don't think they can see me, but they know I'm here. I turn the volume up. They move when I don't look. When I close my eyes. But it's not closer. It's more of them. He started crying. Not loud, just trembling breaths. Then his voice steadied. They don't have voices, but I can still hear them. The tape popped, and that was it. At this point, I wasn't sleeping much. I'd startle awake, thinking I heard the hiss of the player. Sometimes I'd hear a knock at the door, slow and deliberate, but when I checked, nothing. The worst was when I thought I heard breathing behind me, but it always stopped when I turned around. I told myself it was in my head. Just late nights, bad dreams, too much coffee. But deep down, I felt something spreading, like these tapes were letting something in. The last tape I listened to before things changed was number 12. The voice was calm. Too calm. You know me, it said. I froze. I've been here before. I'm on the wall now. Don't turn around. My whole body went cold. They said not to tell you. That's why this tape isn't in your system. But you're hearing it anyway, aren't you? The breathing on the tape got louder. Then it whispered, "You'll be one of us. And when you are, you'll make your own tape." The click of the tape stopping was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I didn't listen to another one that night. But it didn't matter, because when I came the next morning, there was a tape already sitting on my desk. No label, no dust, fresh. And it was warm that I didn't want to go back into the storage room. Not after the last batch of tapes. But that's the thing about curiosity. It's never satisfied. It doesn't care if you're tired or creeped out, or if you've been thinking about something so much that it started to crawl into your dreams. It just pushes you. I told myself I'd only look for one more tape. Just one. It was almost like bargaining with my own mind. Just one more, then you can stop. But I already knew it wouldn't stop. The box was still there, wedged between the shelf and the wall. I don't know why I expected it to be gone, like someone would have come in during the night and taken it away. It had that feeling about it, like it wasn't supposed to be sitting in the corner of that room, waiting for me. I slid the lid off and sifted through the cassettes. They were all unmarked, just like before, except this one had a piece of peeling masking tape across it with 2 words written in faint blue pen. No title. It felt heavier in my hand. Not physically, just heavier. I sat down at the desk, popped the tape into the old player, and hit play. There was a click, a hiss, and then my own voice. I froze. Not someone who sounded like me. Not close enough to be weird. No, it was my voice. The same tone. The same way my throat catches slightly when I'm tired. Even the same habit of breathing into the mic too close. I heard myself say, "This is dispatch. I'm at the scene now." I leaned closer to the player. What? That wasn't right. Dispatchers don't go to scenes. There was wind in the background of the recording. The faint shuffle of gravel under their feet. I listened, my chest tight. "There's a car here," my voice continued. "Rolled over in the ditch. I can smell gasoline." I didn't remember saying this. I didn't remember any of it. But the sound of me breathing hard, the quiver in my voice, it was too real to ignore. On the tape, I heard myself grunt as if lifting something. Then I said, "Oh my God, there's someone inside." There. Silence. Just wind for a few seconds. Then I whispered, "They're still alive. I think it's a woman." The sound of a car door groaning open came through the static. And then a scream. Not a startled scream. Not a help me scream. This one was raw, broken, like it was tearing itself out of her. I pulled my hands back from the recorder like it had shocked me. The scream cut off suddenly, replaced by my voice again, this time shaking, panicked. She looked at me. But her eyes. The tape popped. Just dead air for about 10 seconds. Then a faint, almost whispered, "Don't follow me," in my voice. After that, click. End of tape. I sat there staring at the player. Every part of me wanted to chalk it up to some kind of prank. Maybe someone from the night shift had found a clip of my voice from training recordings, spliced it into something creepy. But that didn't explain the details. The sound of the wind, the crunch of the gravel, the way I said things exactly how I know I would under stress. And there was something else, something in the scream that I recognized but couldn't place. I rewound the tape. Listen again. My stomach twisted. That was me. There was no question. But I had never been in that situation. I'd never been anywhere near a car accident. And there was something else. I grabbed my phone, opened the county's incident log, and started digging through past records. Nothing. No rollover accidents that matched. No unreported crashes. It wasn't there. I even checked older logs, years back. Nothing. My chair creaked as I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My own voice describing something that didn't exist. Unless. The thought hit me in a way I didn't like. What if it hadn't happened yet? I laughed at myself when that idea came up, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that makes you feel better. It was the kind where your chest feels tight and you realize you're trying to convince yourself you're still in control. The rest of my shift felt wrong. I kept replaying the words in my head, "Don't follow me." Why would I tell someone that? Why would I sound like that when I said it? The more I thought about it, the more it felt like those words weren't meant for the woman in the car. It felt like they were meant for me. That night, I dreamed about it. Not a normal dream. More like standing in the middle of a frozen scene. The car was there, just like the recording described. Rolled over in the ditch. Gasoline smell so strong it made my eyes water. The metal shimmered faintly in the moonlight. And then I heard footsteps, mine, coming up behind me. I turned, but it wasn't me. It looked like me, sure. Same build, same clothes. But the eyes didn't look alive. When I woke up, my sheets were tangled like I'd been trying to get away from something in my sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, staring at the floor, until I realized I had been quietly repeating that phrase from the tape. "Don't follow me." I didn't go into storage the next day. Didn't even go near it. But that night, I couldn't help myself. I told myself it was just to check the box, to make sure the tape was still there. It was. And there was another tape sitting on top of it, one I hadn't seen before. This one had no label at all, no markings. But when I picked it up, I swear the plastic felt warm. I should have left it there. I didn't. When I pressed play, it was just static for a good 15 seconds. Then my voice again. Only this time, it sounded different. Like I'd been crying. "I tried to stop it," I said on the tape. "But it's already too late." There was a long silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it. "She knows about you." And the tape ended. I sat there in the dark break room, staring at the player, feeling the hair on my arms stand up. Because in that quiet space, with the faint hum of the vending machine in the corner, I could swear I heard breathing. Not on the tape. Behind me. I didn't turn around right away. Because I knew, if I turned too fast and there was nothing there, I'd never sleep again. And if I turned too slow and something was there, I counted to 3 in my head and spun my chair. No one, just the shadows on the far wall. Still, it felt like I wasn't alone. That was the last time I listened to the tapes at work, at least in the building, because the box started showing up other places. First, it was on the passenger seat of my car. Then it was in my apartment, on my kitchen table, always with the lid closed, always with one new tape on top. I haven't told anyone, because how do you even start that conversation? Hey, I found a box of tapes in the dispatch storage room, and now it follows me home, and they have my voice on them from things that haven't happened yet. Even saying it in my head sounds insane. But tonight, I have a new tape sitting in front of me, and I can't stop staring at it. It's labeled this time, not with words, with a date. Tomorrow's date. I didn't want to go back into the storage room. Not after the last tape. Not after hearing my own voice. But dispatch was slow that night, and the building had that strange, humming quiet it sometimes gets around 3 a.m., like the air itself is holding its breath. My supervisor had gone out for coffee, and the others were buried in their own calls. I was alone at my station, and the storage room was just there. That door in the corner. Always closed. Always waiting. I told myself I was going back just to check, to make sure the tapes were where I'd left them, that they hadn't shifted again. But that was a lie. Deep down, I think I wanted to know if there was more. I left my headset on the desk and walked down the narrow hall. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, each one flickering a little more than the last. The handle was cold when I touched it, colder than it should have been for a room inside a heated building. The smell hit me first, dust, paper, something metallic. The air was heavy, like it hadn't been stirred in decades. The box sat where I'd left it, on the table against the far wall. The tapes stacked neatly inside, black plastic cases with their curling paper labels. Most of them unlabeled, just strips of yellowed masking tape, their handwriting smudged or fading. I started flipping through them, not to play one, just to look. That's when I heard it, not from the tapes. From behind me, a click, the sound of a button being pressed. It was faint, but it was close. I turned slowly, my eyes sweeping the dim room. Nothing moved. The corners were shadows, the shelves stacked with cardboard boxes. Then I saw the red light. It was small, blinking. On the far side of the room, half hidden behind a stack of old binders, sat a tape recorder. I hadn't noticed it before. It wasn't dusty like the others. It looked almost new. The little red light pulsed in the dark. It was recording. I froze. My first thought was that someone had left it running by mistake. But then I heard the faint hiss of static, and under it, my own breathing. I stepped closer. The mic was tiny, but sensitive. Every sound I made came through, just slightly delayed, like an echo I couldn't see. I leaned down. My voice was coming from the recorder, not the one in my head, the actual machine. And it wasn't from the past. It was now. I reached out, my hand shaking, and tapped the mic with my fingertip. The sound thumped back at me half a second later. I whispered hello, and there it was, in perfect mimicry, my voice, my tone, sliding back to me like it was following on a leash. I pulled the tape out. The reels were turning, catching the light. I didn't even think about stopping it. I just rewound a little and hit play. The sound of the room came first, the hum of the lights, the rustle of my jacket, my own footsteps from just moments ago, then my breathing, then my voice. Only it wasn't saying anything I remembered saying. It was describing things I hadn't done. I'm walking down the hall now, it said. The lights are dimmer than usual. The storage door is open. I looked at the door. It was closed when I came in. The voice kept going, calm, steady. I'm looking at the box now. It's closer to the center of the table. The tapes aren't stacked the same way. My eyes went to the box. It was in the center now. The tapes weren't how I'd left them. I stepped back, heart thudding. The recording didn't stop. I'm not alone in here, it said. I froze. Every hair on my neck stood up. My eyes darted to the corners, to the shadows between shelves. The air felt heavier, like the room had shrunk. The tape kept playing. Something is standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the wall. But I didn't turn back. My body wouldn't let me. The voice on the tape dropped lower, almost whispering. It's closer now. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to stop the recorder, to smash it, to run, but I couldn't move. Then the tape said, it's touching my shoulder. I felt it. Cold. Light. Not quite a hand, but something that wanted to be one. I stumbled forward, knocking over a stack of binders. They hit the floor hard, the sound echoing in the small room. The red light on the recorder went out. Silence. I backed toward the door, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't take my eyes off the corner where I'd felt it. Nothing moved. When I finally got the courage to grab the recorder, the tape inside was blank. I rewound it all the way. Nothing but hiss. I left the room, slammed the door, and didn't go back for the rest of my shift. But that wasn't the end. A few hours later, right before dawn, I was logging call notes when I heard something under my desk. A soft clicking sound. I leaned down. There was a tape recorder on the floor. Not the same one from the storage room. This one was older, scratched, with a cracked plastic window. But the red light was blinking. It was recording, and in my headset, through the faint static of the open line, I heard my own voice say, "I'm adding a new tape." I'd only been working night shifts for 2 weeks when it happened. The first thing they tell you in dispatch training is calls will blur together. Different voices, same emergencies, heart attacks, break-ins, car crashes. But the human brain, it notices patterns. It notices when something's off. That night started like any other. The room was dim except for the green glow of the console screens. The hum of the ventilation made everything feel like it was happening underwater. My coffee was already cold. I was just sitting there, one ear on the radio chatter, the other on the silence between calls. It was 2:42 a.m. when my first call of the night came in. The voice on the line was a man's, breathless, panicked, coughing between words. He choked on smoke. "My name's Jared Klein. I'm at 214 Baker Street. My house is on fire." My fingers went on autopilot, typing the address into the system. The fire department's tones went out instantly. "Sir, stay calm," I said. "Are you inside the house right now?" "Yes." There's a loud crash in the background, followed by what sounded like wood splintering. "It's in the kitchen. God, it's..." The line went garbled for a second, like interference. Then I heard him shout, "Please, just hurry." The sound of his voice stuck with me. It wasn't just fear. It was that animal-level desperation, the kind that comes when you know you're running out of air. I stayed on with him until the firefighters got there. I could hear them shouting as they pulled him out. I thought that was the end of it. 15 minutes later, my console lit up again. Same number, same location. I thought maybe it was a follow-up. Maybe he'd forgotten something inside. Maybe he'd panicked and called back. I answered. 911. "What's your emergency?" The same voice came through. Same panic, same ragged breathing. My name's Jared Klein. I'm at 214 Baker Street. My house is on fire." I froze. It wasn't similar. It was exact. The same words, the same tone, the same cough halfway through the sentence. My first thought was that maybe the system had glitched and was playing back the earlier call somehow. But that doesn't happen here. The lines don't work like that. "Sir," I said carefully, "we've already..." Before I could finish, I heard the exact same crash in the background. The exact same splintering wood. The exact same, "Please, just hurry." Every word in the exact same rhythm. Not a single syllable changed. I sat there, my skin crawling, listening to it play out again. I didn't interrupt. I just let it happen, let it end in the same static-filled gasp it had before. When the line went dead, I checked the C80 log. The original call had been marked as resolved. The fire department had already cleared the scene. There was no ongoing emergency. And yet, I'd just taken it again. I didn't tell anyone. I just stared at my coffee for a long time, thinking maybe I was overtired, maybe my brain had filled in blanks. But then, at 3:12 a.m., the console lit up again. Same number, same address, same exact words. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears as I answered. And once again, "My name's Jared Klein. I'm at 214 Baker Street. My house is on fire." By the time the crash came in the background, I was whispering along with him. Word for word, I knew exactly where each breath, each cough, each sound would land. It didn't feel like a recording anymore. It felt like something stuck, like time was caught in a loop, chewing on the same moment over and over, wearing it down until it barely existed. At 3:27 a.m., the fourth call came in. I didn't even pick up right away. I just stared at the blinking light, wondering if I'd gone insane. wondering if this was what it felt like when your mind finally slipped. When I finally answered, I didn't get the fire. I got silence. Long, steady silence. Then a slow inhale. And then, "You shouldn't be here." The voice was still Jared's. Same tone, same smoke-ragged sound. But the panic was gone. The way he said it, it felt heavier than a threat. The line clicked dead. When I tried to call back, the number came up as disconnected. And when I checked the dispatch logs again, I saw something that made my stomach turn. The first call, the real call, had been logged at 2:42 a.m. The second at 2:42 a.m. The third at 2:42 a.m. And the fourth, 2:42 a.m. No matter what the wall clock said, the system had them all stamped with the same time. It was like for the last 45 minutes, I'd been sitting in the same moment, answering the same call over and over. And when it finally broke, it was only to tell me I wasn't supposed to be here at all. It's strange how you only really notice a clock when it's wrong. For the first 2 hours of my shift, the ticking in the dispatch room had been background noise. A soft, steady click from the wall above my head, like a polite reminder that time was moving and I was still stuck here. But somewhere in the middle of the chaos with that fire call, I looked up and the second hand wasn't moving. 3:07. That's what it read. The thin red needle was caught just above the 7, like it was hesitating. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe the battery died. I worked enough night shifts to know these old county building clocks aren't exactly top priority. But when I glanced at the little digital display on my console, same thing. 3:07 a.m. It had been 3:07 for I don't even know how long. My first thought was, okay, system glitch. Power hiccup. But the radios still hummed, the dispatch lines were alive, and the screens were updating. If there had been a power outage, everything in here would have gone black for at least a second. The weirdest part? Outside the window, it looked the same as it had 20 minutes ago. I could see down Main Street from my chair, just a single lamppost still buzzing outside the gas station, and the empty road stretching out toward the highway. Not a single car. No headlights, no taillights. I told myself that was normal. It's a small town. 3 in the morning is dead quiet most nights. But there was this stillness, like the air itself was holding its breath. The radio crackled again, making me jump. Dispatch, ladder 4 is on scene. Still no sign of. And then it cut. Mid-sentence. I leaned in, waiting for them to come back, but the channel stayed dead. Ladder 4, repeat last transmission, I said. Nothing. Just static. I scribbled a note in the incident log, my pen pressing too hard against the paper. Then my eyes went to the corner of my desk where my phone was charging. The screen was dark. I tapped it. 3:07 a.m. I tapped it again, harder this time. The screen blinked like it was waking from a deep sleep, but the time didn't change. I picked it up and held it in my hand for a minute. Waiting. Watching. Still 3:07. That's when something in my chest shifted. I can't explain it any better than that. It wasn't panic yet, just this tight, cold feeling like I'd suddenly realized I'd been holding on to something fragile and it had started to crack. I stood up. The room felt colder than it had earlier. I went to the hallway, where another clock hung above the break room door. 3:07. Down the hall, toward the lockers, another clock. 3:07. Every single one. I walked faster, my shoes making dull, hollow sounds on the floor. The building was empty except for me, but I started to get that crawling sensation, like maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. I ended up in the watch commander's office. He's the guy who runs the shift, except tonight, he wasn't here. He called out sick around midnight. The office smelled like dust and cold coffee. On his desk was another digital clock. 3:07. I stared at it for a while, not even thinking, just staring. When I finally moved, I went back to the dispatch floor, sat down, and told myself to focus. The fire crew still hadn't checked in again. That's when the phone rang. Not one of the emergency lines, the internal one, the one only other stations can call. I answered. County dispatch. There was breathing on the other end. It was faint at first, like whoever had the phone pressed against their chest. I waited, my other hand already reaching for a pen. Hello, this is dispatch. The breathing stopped, and then the sound of my own voice. Hello, this is dispatch. Exactly the same. Same tone. Same rhythm. Like someone had recorded me just seconds ago and was playing it back. I didn't hang up right away. I just sat there, frozen, while the recording of my voice kept repeating. The pauses between were slightly off, like the call was being looped by hand, not a machine. Finally, I hung up. My fingers were stiff. I looked up at the clock again. Still 3:07. I think that's when the idea really hit me. Not just that the clocks had stopped, but that time had stopped. And I was still moving inside it. I tried the outside line next. Picked up the phone, dialed my own cell, just to see what would happen. Nothing. No ring. Then I heard it again, the faint buzz of a phone vibrating. It wasn't coming from my desk. It was coming from the hallway. I stepped out, heart pounding, and followed the sound. It led me toward the storage room at the far end of the hall. The door was cracked open, just enough for a thin strip of light to cut across the floor. The vibration stopped when I got closer. I hesitated before pushing the door open, expecting to find maybe a forgotten phone on a shelf. But the shelves were empty except for some old binders and a box of printer paper. And on the floor, dead center, was a desk phone. One of ours. It had been unplugged from the wall, the cord trailing across the tiles like a long black vein. I didn't touch it. I just backed out of the room and shut the door. Back at my desk, I checked the incident log. My earlier note about ladder 4 was still there, but the timestamp, 3:07, not 3:07 like it normally shows. Just 3:07. No seconds. No AM. I don't remember deciding to do it, but my hand went to the radio mic. Ladder 4, do you copy? The static popped and hissed. Then, County Ladder 4 on scene. Still no sign of. My blood went cold. It was the exact same transmission as before. Word for word. Cut off in the exact same spot. I didn't reply. I just sat there, holding the mic, my mind struggling to catch up. It happened again 15 minutes later. Except there were no minutes. It was just the same voice, the same words, bleeding through the speakers over and over like whatever was out there was caught in the same loop I was. The air in the room felt heavier. I could hear my own breathing too loud in my ears. I thought about going outside, just stepping out to see if the world really had stopped. But something deep in me didn't want to. I had this certainty, I guess, that if I opened that door, I wouldn't find the street the way it should be. I stayed in my chair. The phone rang again. Same line. I didn't answer it this time. I just watched it flash until it went dead. Then, in the silence, I realized something else. The ticking was gone. The clock above me wasn't just stuck, it was silent. And somehow that was worse, because now I could hear the hum. It was faint at first, but once I noticed it, it was everywhere. A low, constant hum that wasn't coming from the electronics. It was deeper, like it was coming from the building itself. I sat there in the dark, listening to it, the same thought looping in my head. It's still 3:07, and I didn't know if it was ever going to be anything else again, that I don't know how long I've been sitting there before I realized I wasn't tired anymore. Not alert either, just suspended. I kept glancing toward the big wall clock above the dispatch desks. It still said 3:07 a.m., same as it had for, I don't even know how long now. It wasn't broken, at least not in the way a normal clock breaks. The second hand was still there, still aimed straight at the 12 like it was ready to move, but it never did. Like it was holding its breath. The building felt hollow. That kind of quiet where even the buzzing of the fluorescent lights sounds muffled, like you're underwater. Only the radio crackle and the occasional keyboard click broke it. The rest of the dispatchers had stopped talking hours ago. If they even were hours. We didn't whisper about it. We didn't look at each other like, hey, something's weird here. We just pretended to work, pretended that time was still rolling forward. The phone lines didn't care about the clock. They still rang. The first one after I noticed the stillness was about the fire again. The exact same one I'd taken before. Same voice, same panic, same choking sounds in the background. 341 South Grant. It's in the kitchen. The walls are. The man's voice cracked, then broke into coughing. I didn't even need to ask for the address. It was already there in my notes from earlier. I knew the next words before he said them. Spreading up the stairs. My wife's still upstairs. I felt cold. Not the normal kind of cold, but the kind that makes your teeth ache and your jaw lock. I could have sworn I'd already sent units there. So I did it again. Gave the same instructions. Logged it the same way. Try not to think about how my hands trembled more than the first time. 15 minutes later. No, it felt like 15 minutes. It was probably nothing. Time wasn't moving, remember? The same call came through again. Same address. Same tone of voice. Like the man had been reset. Like he was stuck in the same few minutes of terror and didn't even know it. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't say, hey, this is weird, this is the third time. Because everyone else was doing the same thing. Just silently playing along with whatever this was. After the third repeat of the fire, it changed. The next call was a woman reporting a break-in. I'd taken it earlier that night, too, back when the clock still worked. Her words were identical. Even the background noises. The faint slam of a door, the whispery sound of wind over the line. She gasped in the same place. Said my name the same way, even though I never told her my name. I remembered this call clearly because, the first time, I'd been startled by how she seemed to already know me. Now she said it again, like she had to, like she'd say it forever. After a while, the calls became predictable. I could almost mouth along with them as they came in. The screaming man in the alley. The kid saying his dad wouldn't wake up. The old man swearing someone was in his shed, but refusing to check. Over and over. And always from the same night. Never anything new. At some point, I decided to stop logging them. Not officially. I'd type for a bit, then just tap keys to make it look like I was busy. It didn't matter. Nothing changed. Outside the big front windows, the street was still swallowed in black. Not just dark dead. Like every building past the parking lot was a painted backdrop. No headlights. No wind pushing trash across the pavement. No sunrise bleeding in from the east. The world was a photograph, and we were inside it. Every so often, I'd stand and walk to the vending machine in the corner just to feel like I was still allowed to move. But even that felt wrong. The hum of the machine was too steady, too constant, like it was looped on the same sound. And when I pressed the button for a soda, the can didn't fall. It was already there, sitting in the tray like it had been waiting for me. The taste was flat. I started to think about the first call again. The fire. Why did it keep coming back? Why all of them? Were they really happening over and over? Or was I just hearing echoes? And then I thought of something worse. What if these weren't the calls repeating? What if I was repeating? What if I was just doing the same shift over and over, thinking it was all continuous? I tried to test it. I took a sticky note and wrote a single word. Stop. I slid it under my keyboard. If the night ever moved forward, I'd see it in the morning. If I woke up, or reset, or whatever, maybe it wouldn't be there. The next 15 minutes came. The fire call again. I answered, said nothing, and just listened. The man screamed, begged, coughed, and then the line cut dead, exactly where it had before. I checked the note. Still there. I don't know why, but that made me panic worse than anything, because it meant I was still in the same place. Not a dream, not a skip, just trapped. One of the other dispatchers, Maria, suddenly stood up. She looked pale, like her skin had gone the same color as printer paper. She said, "The clock's wrong," like she'd only just noticed. Then she laughed, once, and sat back down without another word. That was the last thing she said the entire shift, if you can even call it a shift. Eventually, I stopped answering the phone entirely. I just stared at the caller ID until it went to the automated hold system. But the calls never stopped. They didn't fade away like they should have on a slow night. They didn't come in bursts like a busy one. They just kept. I tried to remember what it looked like outside at 3:08 a.m. in a normal world. I couldn't. My brain kept showing me the black, empty street, the stillness, the way the street lamps looked like they were frozen in ice. I got up and pressed my forehead to the glass. It was cold, colder than it should have been from the AC. I tried cupping my hands around my eyes to see further, but the dark just ate everything. I could have sworn there was something out there, though. Not movement exactly. More like a shape where shapes shouldn't be. Too tall for a person. Too still to be alive. I stepped back, blinking hard. When I looked again, it was gone. But the clock was still 3:07. I don't know how many hours later, I heard a sound from the hallway behind us. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I turned to see if anyone else noticed. No one looked up, not even Maria. The steps stopped just short of the doorway. And then the fire call rang in again. I didn't answer. I just watched the dark hallway. The caller ID blinked. The phone stopped ringing. I waited for the steps to start again, but they didn't. At that point, I realized I couldn't remember when I'd last eaten, or used the bathroom, or even blinked. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe we were just set pieces in someone else's loop. The phone rang again, different call this time. The woman with the break-in. And this time, when she said my name, it didn't sound exactly like before. Her voice cracked on it, like she was getting tired too. I thought the worst part would be the cold, or maybe the silence. But it wasn't. The worst part was realizing I was never going home. We were already deep into whatever this was, this night that didn't end. But there was still a part of me that clung to the idea that something would eventually break it, that the sun would come up, that the power would come back, that I'd clock out and drag myself home to my tiny apartment and collapse in a bed. But time had stopped lying to me and started telling the truth. The same truth over and over. 3:07 a.m. No sunrise, no light, just the hum of the fluorescent bulbs above me, the stale coffee smell in the air, and the phones. Always the phones. They rang on their own schedule, like heartbeats that didn't belong to me, pulling me in whether I wanted to answer or not. And every single call was the same. The woman screaming that there was someone in her house. The old man whispering that shadows were moving across his yard. The fire alarm beeping in the background of a panicked voice. I'd taken each of those calls hours ago, days ago. I don't even know anymore. And yet, here they were, repeating word for word. Sometimes I thought I heard tiny differences, the pitch of a voice slightly higher, the breath a fraction faster. But no, it was the same. Every word the same. Like a recording. It was around what should have been morning, though it was still pitch black outside, when something shifted. Not in the room. In me. There's a kind of fatigue that sinks into your bones when you realize there's no point in holding on to normal. I think that's when the fear starts to change flavor. It stops being about danger and starts tasting like surrender. I just finished taking the shadow in the yard call again when the line went dead mid-sentence. Not in the usual way, where the caller just stops talking. No, this was like the sound had been sucked out of the world, like someone hit mute on reality itself. And then nothing. The silence felt heavier than the air. I glanced at the wall clock. 3:07 a.m. I glanced at my watch. 3:07 a.m. I turned to the other dispatcher, Jenna, but she wasn't even moving. Not in a frozen statue way, not like she was stuck mid-blink, just still, like there was no reason to move anymore. I remember asking her something, I don't even remember what, and she just stared ahead, her lips parted, her headset still in place. The phone rang again. One single ring, then nothing. My hand was already on the receiver before I realized what I was doing. It was like I didn't even get to make the choice. I lifted it to my ear. At first, I heard nothing, not even static, just a kind of weight, a pressure in my head, then breathing. Slow, familiar. Hello, I said, my voice rough. The breathing quickened, like whoever it was had been waiting for me to speak. And then, help me. I froze. It wasn't that the voice sounded familiar. It wasn't that it reminded me of someone I knew. It was my voice. Not kind of my voice. Not similar. No, it was my voice. Who is this? I asked, my throat tightening. You know who I am, it said, and it sounded wrong hearing my tone, my pauses, my cadence coming from somewhere else. I'm still here, and I can't get out. I didn't know what to say. My mind was trying to make shapes out of impossible thoughts. You can't get out of where? There was a pause. I could hear the faint hitch in the breathing, the same way I do when I'm trying not to cry. This night, it said, it's not stopping. We're not going anywhere. We're stuck. It felt like I was talking to a recording of myself, but the words weren't any I'd ever spoken. I don't understand, I said. Yes, you do. My grip on the phone was so tight, I could feel the plastic flexing. I thought of hanging up, but something deep down told me it wouldn't matter. The line wasn't the thing connecting us. It was the night itself. Why are you calling me? I asked, my voice cracking. To tell you, it said. I'm the last call you'll ever take. And then I heard it, a faint echo in the background, like a replay of my own voice from seconds ago. Me saying the exact same words I'd just spoken. I turned toward Jenna again. She was still staring ahead, but now her lips were moving, soundless, just shaping words I couldn't hear. I pressed the receiver harder against my ear. Where are you? I asked. Look outside, my voice said. My stomach nodded. I didn't want to, but my legs moved anyway. I stepped to the window beside the console, looking out at the street below. It was still dark, still, except there was someone standing across the street in the pool of light from the one flickering street lamp that had somehow stayed on through all this. Not moving, not waving, just standing there, facing up toward the window. From this far away, I couldn't make out their face, but I didn't need to. I knew the slope of those shoulders, the way the hands hung at the sides, the exact tilt of the head. It was me. I took a step back from the glass, my chest tight. On the line, my voice whispered, "Don't let it in." And then the call ended. No click, no dial tone, just gone. I stood there for I don't know how long, watching the figure across the street. At some point, the phone started ringing again. Calls I'd heard before. Voices I could recite in my sleep now. But I didn't answer them, because I knew the next time I picked up the phone, it wouldn't be them. It would be me again. And the worst part? I didn't know if the voice on the other end was warning me or trying to take my place.